Get out with your kids, you trashy wife.
With those words, my mother-in-law throws my belongings at me. I look to David for help, but he just awkwardly avoids my gaze.
How dare you deceive my precious son? I haven't cheated. This child is definitely David's. Shut up. You're probably cheating with that part-timer named Ryan, aren't you?
At those words, I snap. As if being falsely accused of cheating wasn't irritating enough, now to be suspected of having an affair with Ryan too. I glare at my mother-in-law.
What? Let's do a DNA test.
Fine by me. At my words, my mother-in-law smirks confidently. Providing evidence of your own infidelity, what a foolish wife. Laughing, my mother-in-law. I swore to prove to her that I've never cheated. 2 weeks later, I checked the results of the test and sent them to my in-laws' house. A few hours after, they must have seen the results. In just a short time, my phone was flooded with dozens of messages from my mother-in-law.
What have you done?
My name is Luna. A 27-year-old housewife.
Everyone, dinner is ready. Thanks as always.
My parents have always been gentle, and it was rare to see them argue. My mother, while gentle, always made sure that my father and I could live peacefully. My father, who never forgot to respect and appreciate her for that. Perhaps because of how they raised me, I've rarely gotten angry myself. Sure, there are things I can't compromise on or that irritate me. But getting angry is exhausting, and it often seemed easier to just let things go.
Luna, are you not pushing yourself too hard? You always give in to others.
My mother would worry about me sometimes, but I believed I had my own convictions. I stood my ground when it mattered and lived at a pace that didn't overwhelm me. That's so like Luna, always doing things at your own pace. My friend Layla often said that. I didn't mind being seen as laid back. After all, I wasn't causing trouble for anyone, so there shouldn't be any problem. And there were people who loved me for being that way.
I love how gentle you are, Luna.
Those were the words of my husband, David. We met in college. At a matchmaking party a mutual acquaintance had organized.
I hate conflict. I like people with a peaceful aura who don't get into fights, like you, Luna.
At the matchmaking party, that's what David told me. He didn't really want to attend the mixer, but also didn't want to make his friends uncomfortable by refusing. That's why he ended up going.
You really think of your friends, huh? I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Hey, Luna. If you're not seeing anyone right now, I'd like to go out with you.
And with that confession from him, we started dating. He accepted that I had my own non-negotiables, and we were able to date without any major arguments or issues.
Luna, will you marry me? Yes, I'd love to.
After several years of dating, we got married.
Thanks for becoming a part of this family. David's too good for me.
My in-laws were also gentle people, with a smiling mother-in-law and a kind-looking father-in-law. At that time, I was truly glad to become a part of their family.
What? Your father-in-law?
Not long after David and I got married, my father-in-law was hospitalized. Apparently, he was involved in a car accident. Fortunately, there was no danger to his life, but he fractured his leg and had to be hospitalized for a while.
Well, it's good that it wasn't serious.
I'm sorry to make you worry. When David and I went to visit, my father-in-law apologized with a look of regret.
Really, hearing about the accident almost took years off my life.
My mother-in-law said, her face clouded with worry. Actually, my in-laws run a restaurant. Primarily, my mother-in-law manages the place, with my father-in-law and a few part-timers supporting her. My father-in-law is good at paperwork, while my mother-in-law says, if I look at letters and numbers for too long, my head starts to hurt, indicating her aversion to it. With my father-in-law hospitalized, the person handling all the background tasks was gone. Since some of these tasks involve money, they couldn't just be left to the part-timers. What are we going to do now? I found myself muttering. It's already hard enough that my father-in-law was suddenly hospitalized, putting a mental strain on them. In this condition, managing the restaurant seems impossible. Maybe they'll have to temporarily close. Thinking this, David and I headed home.
Luna, can we talk?
As we were taking a break at home, David approached me with a look of guilt. I could somewhat guess what he wanted to say.
Can you quit your job and help out at the family restaurant?
And he pleaded with me like that. David and I work at completely different companies, doing entirely different jobs.
Hey, David. You know how much I value my current job, right?
David avoids my gaze at my question. I work at a company founded by Layla. I've been doing my dream job in design there, and I'm incredibly passionate about my work. I've talked about this to David multiple times, and he has always supported me.
I understand that. But I was hoping you could help out at the family business until Dad gets back.
At his words, I hesitated. So, I asked David for some time to think it over, leaving the matter unresolved for the moment. Indeed, running the restaurant would be difficult under these circumstances. But honestly, if it's that concerning, David could help out.
Well, that's probably impossible.
David, like his mother, isn't good at paperwork. Considering he doesn't do household chores either, it's likely he can't cook. David trying to help out at the store would just be a hindrance.
When you think about it, I'm the only option.
With that thought, I decided to consult Layla.
I get it, your in-laws are having a tough time, and it's hard to say no given your position as their daughter-in-law. That's right. Plus, I have a good relationship with my in-laws and want to help them. That's why I have a favor to ask you, Layla.
Layla gladly agreed to my request. Thanks to that, I was able to decide to help out at my in-laws' store.
David, about the store, I'll help out. Really? Thank you.
David was thrilled with my decision, and when he told his mother, she was grateful too. If they're that grateful, I'll do my best. Just when I thought that, my mother-in-law's attitude changed dramatically once I started helping. Now that you're here, you'll have to prove yourself useful. The plan was for my mother-in-law to cook, the part-timers to handle the front, and for me, who was unfamiliar with everything, to work behind the scenes. However, my mother-in-law started ordering me around. Take orders quickly, if you have time to stand around, clean, tidy up and wash the dishes. It escalated from there, and eventually, she even had me doing simple cooking tasks. Without allowing for breaks, as soon as I tried to sit, she'd say, "You're a daughter-in-law, don't slack off."
Mrs. Luna, I'll take care of this, please take a break.
That supportive voice belonged to Ryan, a college student and the part-time leader. He was observant and subtly supported me. But being unaccustomed as I was, I ended up exhausted from being overworked every day.
I'm going to collapse at this rate. Just bear with it until Dad comes back. If we can get through this, we'll manage somehow.
David would say with a troubled laugh whenever I told him about how I was being treated. David wouldn't even listen to my complaints.
Maybe I made the wrong choice.
At first, I thought David was a peace-loving and kind person. But in reality, he preferred to avoid trouble and wouldn't get involved in any. Because he's that kind of person, he wouldn't even try to mediate between my mother-in-law and me. Seeing this side of him, I sighed.
I need to rest soon.
I was told to come in early again the next day by my mother-in-law. I gave up talking to David and decided to rest in my room.
Don't dawdle, get to work quickly.
I was helping out at the store from morning, but feeling nauseous, I crouched down.
Ugh, I feel sick. Mrs. Luna? You look pale, are you okay?
Ryan, noticing me, offered to take me to the hospital.
Thank you, Ryan. It's okay. My sister Layla always takes care of me, so it's the least I can do.
Ryan smiled brightly at my words. Ryan is Layla's brother. I was surprised to find him working at my in-laws' store. We were both surprised when we saw each other there.
But if you hadn't been here, I wouldn't have made it to the hospital.
When I tried to go to the hospital, my mother-in-law complained and tried to stop me. Ryan stood up to her, saying, "Are you planning to make a sick person work?" And thanks to him, I was able to get to the hospital.
Congratulations. Eh?
And upon examination, it was discovered that I was pregnant. It seems I was feeling unwell due to morning sickness. I immediately contacted David.
What? Pregnant? Is that true? Pregnant? Luna's pregnant?
Despite it being David's phone, I could somehow hear his parents' voices.
Why can I hear your parents?
When I asked, David explained the situation with a bit of trouble. Apparently, after my mother-in-law thought I had run away, she contacted David to complain, and they ended up going together to my father-in-law to vent.
Well, until just a moment ago, my dad was actually lecturing her, saying she's working out of kindness. What are you complaining about? Really?
My father-in-law had scolded my mother-in-law, saying, "Luna quit her job out of goodwill to help, and don't make her work when she's not feeling well." Hearing that made me feel somewhat relieved. My father-in-law was on my side. That alone was comforting.
Luna, congratulations on your pregnancy.
Then, the phone was handed to my father-in-law.
My wife was wrong. I've told her to pay you a more generous salary as compensation.
At those words, I was taken aback. That's right, I hadn't received any salary. Until now, I hadn't had the luxury to worry about such things and had completely forgotten about my salary.
Luna? You haven't received your salary, have you?
My silence must have given me away. My father-in-law asked, his voice containing anger.
Well, I've been collecting it for her.
David hurriedly answered to his father's question.
Why are you collecting it? It's Luna's salary for her work. It should naturally go to her.
My father-in-law's voice was low and cold. My mother-in-law responded.
But Luna is a wife, so it should go to her husband, David. Enough. She's someone's precious daughter from another family. What are you thinking?
My father-in-law scolded. I was told later that although my father-in-law is usually mild-mannered, he becomes terrifying when someone steps out of line in terms of common sense or manners. My mother-in-law, who usually acted sweetly and amiably, was afraid of him. However, with my father-in-law hospitalized, her usual restraint was gone, leading to her recent outburst.
You've married into quite the family, haven't you?
Ryan, who had been silently listening next to me, said with a wry smile. I returned the smile with a wry one of my own.
I'm sorry for everything.
Later, David came to apologize to me. He must have been scolded by his father to protect his wife. David promised that he would truly protect me from now on.
All right. I'll forgive you this time, but in return, make sure you really protect me.
I still have feelings for David, and I don't want to deprive my child of their father. So, I decided to wait and see how things would go.
Sorry for the sudden notice. I'll be in your care from today.
It's all right, you've had a tough time. Take it easy here. Not long after, I decided to go back to my parents' house for a prenatal visit. I came home early, wary of my mother-in-law's presence.
Being pregnant isn't an illness, and you're not in your final month, so you can work as usual.
My mother-in-law contacted me after I returned from the hospital. Apparently, she hadn't learned her lesson even after being scolded by my father-in-law. I told David about it, but all he said was, "I understand. I'll talk to Mom," and nothing was done. Therefore, I used my morning sickness as an excuse to take refuge at my parents' house early. I also told my caring father-in-law about it.
My family is to blame. Luna, your decision isn't wrong,
he said, accepting my decision. My parents also warmly welcomed me, so I've been able to stay at my parents' house with peace of mind.
Well, if Luna has decided, I won't oppose it. Just make sure to give birth to a healthy child.
Even David was surprised by my early return but saw me off with those words. The only one who opposed until the end was my mother-in-law.
To think you're going back to your parents' house for your birth so early.
She complained about it. However, since she had been glared at by my father-in-law the other day, she couldn't stop me.
The store will manage by splitting the work among the part-timers. That's right. You just focus on the baby,
Ryan and Layla said, so I focused solely on my baby. This might have been the most peaceful and happiest time for me. Indeed, the morning sickness was tough, but my love for the growing baby in my belly only increased. And a few months later, I gave birth to my adorable son, Asher.
Thank you for being born, Asher.
I simply adore Asher. My parents are smitten with him, and Layla and Ryan were thrilled too. However, David seemed to be different. David, haven't seen you once. Are you that busy with work? Yeah, it seems like it. He didn't visit me while I was at my parents' house. Not even after the birth.
Hey, David. Why aren't you showing your face?
Thinking he might not be realizing his responsibilities as a father, I contacted David. I'm really sorry, work has been so busy, was his reply. I sighed at his response. What is he doing? I'll have to confront him when I get back home. With that determination, I returned home with Asher after some time.
Welcome back, Luna. And I've missed you, Asher.
David greeted us with a smile, lovingly looking at Asher. Seeing this, I felt a bit of remorse. He truly loved Asher.
I've managed to free up some time from work, so I'll be more actively involved from now on.
With those words, we were able to live peacefully for a while. However, Asher developed a sudden rash and we had to seek medical care.
Is that really true? Yes, there's no mistake. Asher's blood type is A.
During the visit, we also had Asher's blood type checked, which turned out to be A. Both David and I are type O. So, we were shocked, having assumed Asher would also be O. Of course, I haven't cheated. My only romantic experience has been with David.
Did you go to the hospital today? How was it?
The rash is getting better, but...
What? Is there something else?
David tilted his head, puzzled by my demeanor. I told him about Asher's blood type. He widened his eyes in surprise.
I didn't know that could happen.
That was all David said at the time. I was relieved because he didn't seem to suspect me.
I heard a little bit.
The next day, that's what my mother-in-law exclaimed as she barged in. Apparently, David, after hearing from me, immediately reported to his mother. She, having heard the story, suspected I had cheated and came storming in.
Having a child with your lover. You shameless wife. I haven't cheated. David is the only one for me.
I retorted while glaring at David, who had let her in and now looked uneasy behind his mother. David was fidgeting behind his mother. Amidst this, Asher, startled by his grandmother's shouting, began to cry.
Quiet. Stop it, please.
I instinctively picked up Asher to protect him from my mother-in-law's advance. She glared at me, gripping my belongings.
Take your child and get out, you shameless wife.
She screamed, throwing my things at me. I looked at David for help, but he just awkwardly looked away.
How dare you deceive my precious son? I haven't cheated. Asher is definitely David's child. Shut up. You're probably cheating with that part-timer Ryan, aren't you?
At those words, I snapped. Already irritated by the baseless accusations of infidelity, now to be suspected of something with Ryan too. I glared fiercely at my mother-in-law.
What? Let's have a DNA test.
Fine by me. At my words, my mother-in-law smirks confidently.
Providing evidence of your own infidelity, what a foolish wife.
She laughs. I vowed to prove to her that I had absolutely not cheated. After returning to my parents' house, I explained the situation to them.
How could she berate you like that? We believe in you, Luna.
My parents believed in me. And even offered to cover the costs of the DNA test.
Oh. What's wrong?
At that moment, I received a message from someone. This person had heard about the situation and offered their support.
Having that person's support would be really reassuring. I'll definitely prove them wrong.
My anger towards my mother-in-law became my driving force.
I'll make her regret this.
2 weeks later, I checked the DNA test results and sent them to my in-laws' house.
I wonder how they'll react.
Muttering to myself, I went to Asher. A few hours later, after they must have seen the results, my phone was flooded with dozens of messages from my mother-in-law.
What have you done?
Picking up the phone call that came just then, I was met with her yelling.
I just proved what you wanted. Don't joke with me, you worthless wife.
And then she proceeded to hurl insults at me. This was getting nowhere. Deciding this, I left Asher with my parents and headed to confront my in-laws.
I'm coming too. I can't forgive anyone who hurts my best friend. I'll go as well.
Layla and Ryan, who had joined us along the way, were already informed and had agreed to come with me. As a result, the three of us headed to my in-laws' house.
We're coming in. How dare you show your face here? Welcome, Luna.
At the in-laws, there was my mother-in-law, fuming with anger, my father-in-law, welcoming me with a smile, and David, cowering in a corner.
What are you angry about? I just proved my innocence. This is wrong. You must have tampered with it.
My mother-in-law lamented, holding the DNA results in her hand. There, clearly written, was that Asher was indeed David's son.
And you're still not satisfied after seeing that? How could this be possible? First of all, I've been slaving away for you. I didn't even have the time to cheat, you know?
In reality, my days were spent being called out early by my mother-in-law and only getting back around the time David returned home. Even during work, I was constantly under my mother-in-law's watchful eye, leaving no room for infidelity.
Even I, who was suspected of being the lover, was too busy with work and studies to meet outside the store. If anything, when I'm not at the store, I'm often with friends or family. You can check if you like.
Ryan confidently stated. Faced with his assertion, my mother-in-law fell silent. Then, Ryan's gaze shifted to David, who was silently observing.
Why are you staying quiet, David? Eh? First of all, it was you who asked Luna to work at the store, right? Yet, you ignore your wife being overworked and don't help her. Instead, you report to your mother to have her scold Luna in your place. That's pretty cowardly of you.
David, faced with these cold words, averted his eyes, mumbling, "That's not true." This was the perfect opportunity to air my grievances.
You don't lift a finger to help around the house even though I come home exhausted every day.
While I'm preparing meals, he lazes around on the couch, never does any cleaning or laundry, yet complains about dirt and piled up laundry. When I retort with, "If you notice, why don't you do it?" he always escapes to the bedroom, saying, "I have to get up early tomorrow." Moreover, whenever I tried to talk to him about his mother, he would only offer lip service and never actually do anything.
Just as Ryan said, you knew your mother would get angry about Asher, so you reported it, didn't you? You really are a coward. Because...
David looked away, searching for an excuse. This man is not kind. He's just a man who wants to avoid trouble.
There's no excuse. I agreed to help at the store because you asked me to. But between the salary issue and now this, I'm completely fed up with you. I'm really sorry.
Finally, David apologized, looking flustered.
I was just confused because Asher has a different blood type. About that blood type issue, there's someone else here to explain.
David and my mother-in-law puzzledly responded with to my statement. Responding to them was,
I'll explain about that.
It was my father-in-law, who had been watching the situation unfold with a smile until now. His voice was frighteningly low. Sensing something, my mother-in-law turned pale.
What's wrong, Mom?
David was confused by his mother's reaction. Ignoring the two, my father-in-law pulled out a piece of paper.
Is that a DNA test? Whose is it? Mine and yours. Eh?
Indeed, that paper was between David and his father, stating that their parent-child relationship was denied. Seeing it, David was speechless.
I'm not Dad's son.
David was actually the child of my mother-in-law's lover, not my father-in-law. The lover was type A, and David was also type A. My mother-in-law's refusal to accept Asher's DNA results and her outrage were likely attempts to cover up her own infidelity.
That's not true, right?
David had assumed he was type O because both his parents were unaware of the truth.
Well, I've always had my suspicions. Eh?
He had noticed my mother-in-law's infidelity long ago and had doubted whether David was truly his child.
But at that time, David was 10 years old, and I had already developed a bond with him from raising him. So, I thought there was no need to uncover the truth and didn't investigate further.
However, after hearing about my situation, my father-in-law became angry and decided to reveal the truth. He contacted me, saying, "I'll handle the investigation instead, so please include our tests as well."
Investigation? About what you've been using Luna's salary for?
At those words, David turned pale.
Pushing the store and household chores onto Luna while you indulge in affairs. It seems like father and son are alike in this respect, my father-in-law remarked.
Indeed, David had been having affairs and spending my salary on his lovers. It turned out his lovers didn't know he was married. In other words, he had deceived both me and his lovers.
You'll pay for this,
I told him, and David slumped down.
You two will pay for your affairs. And we're getting a divorce. I'll also quit my job,
Ryan added, following my father-in-law. Ryan then declared his decision to quit as well, as if adding to the statement. Why? My mother-in-law's face asked.
If Luna and her husband are getting a divorce, the store won't survive. You only cook and don't do any of the administrative work like accounting.
Even that cooking had lately been left to me and the staff. The regulars had noticed this, saying they came to support Luna, who works hard in her husband's place. Without me, the foot traffic had already started to dwindle. If neither Luna nor the father-in-law return to the store, the remaining regulars will leave too.
The store, supported by the regulars and Luna, will surely collapse. Everyone senses this and is quitting one after another. No way,
Ryan said, causing my mother-in-law to panic. That store was originally managed by my mother-in-law's family for generations.
I can't let it end with me. Hey, we're not getting divorced, right? It'll be hard to find a job while taking care of a child, even with support from the family.
David, realizing the situation, pleaded with me. Then, Layla stepped forward.
Unfortunately for you, she's my capable subordinate. I'll take full responsibility for employing her.
I had consulted with Layla before quitting, and she had arranged for me to return to the company anytime. So, re-employment was not an issue.
I won't forgive anyone who hurts my best friend,
Layla said with a smile to David. Following that, David and I successfully divorced. David kept pleading, "I don't want to divorce, I want to be with Luna and Asher," but Layla's husband, a lawyer, played a crucial role.
I told him to squeeze everything out of your husband.
True to Layla's word, David paid a substantial amount in alimony and child support, which I received in a lump sum, allowing me to live comfortably for a while. My father-in-law also opted for a divorce without demanding alimony, in exchange for no division of assets.
Are you sure you're okay with not demanding alimony? Yes, it's fine. I have enough savings, and either way, she's finished.
Originally, my in-laws ran the same store but kept their finances strictly separate. Thanks to this, my father-in-law had been able to save money, while my mother-in-law had squandered hers, leaving her with no savings. All that remained for her was the store.
That store will collapse soon. Once that happens, she'll have no one but David to rely on,
my father-in-law said. And that became a reality. Sometime later, while having tea with Layla, the topic came up.
What happened to David and the others? Oh, I got a message from them.
I went on to tell about what happened next. The store could no longer manage without us, leading to its quick demise. The remaining regulars left. And soon after, the store was buried in debt. Eventually, my mother-in-law had to sell the store and the land to pay off her debts and, with nothing left, ran to David.
But David seems to be having a hard time too.
Turns out, one of David's mistresses was a newcomer at a company his company dealt with. The newcomer, feeling deceived, cried and complained to everyone, quickly spreading the story. The story reached David's company, and he was indirectly asked to resign.
With the money from selling their house, David had to pay off the debt he incurred to cover the alimony and child support and moved to a cheap apartment. He was living day to day on part-time jobs when his mother showed up, making life even harder for him. And he reached out to you for help? After betraying you first, as if you would help him.
Exactly.
I blocked him immediately.
He had sent a long message detailing his situation, but I didn't respond and blocked him instead. Thankfully, I've been living peacefully since. Meanwhile, I've been raising Asher smoothly with my parents' help. With my stay-at-home mom actively taking care of him, I can raise my child with peace of mind.
It's good to see you happy. Let's talk about the future then.
We were having tea today to discuss future plans. With Asher still requiring a lot of care, I plan to start working from home once he grows a bit more.
I'm so glad you're back, Luna. Your designs are popular, and there's something special about them that only you can create.
Layla complimented me. Feeling appreciated like this motivated me to work hard once I return. A few years later, around the time I began to return to work.
Hello. How are Asher and you today? Hello. He's been energetic since the morning.
Ryan stopped by the workplace. He's always been considerate and fond of Asher. Now a university graduate, Ryan works diligently in sales at the same company as Layla and me.
Luna, I've liked you for a long time. Will you go out with me?
Ryan proposed, leaving me speechless. Facing my stunned silence, he looked at me earnestly.
I'll make sure both you and Asher are happy.
Ryan said that to me. However, I'm 5 years older than him. Because of that, I couldn't immediately respond and decided to put off answering. Then, soon after that.
Luna. Eh? David?
David appeared before me. Surprised by the sudden encounter, I couldn't flee immediately, and David approached me with a smile.
I've been looking for you. Hey, let's get back together. I can't stand it anymore. I refuse. Who would get back with you?
I immediately rejected David's words.
You too? You're mocking me too.
Then, suddenly angry, David raised his fist towards me. That's when it happened.
What are you doing?
Ryan intervened, pulling me close and glaring at David.
Enough already. Luna doesn't need you anymore. Shut up. What do you know about Luna? Hey, Luna, you still need me, right? No, I don't need you. I already have him.
At my words, David looked hurt.
What's that supposed to mean? In the end, you betrayed me and had an affair with him.
Ryan and I both showed a look of disbelief at his words. We had said at the time that neither of us had the time to engage in affairs.
Unlike you, I haven't cheated. He and I aren't even officially dating yet. Lies. It's not a lie. Indeed, he confessed to me recently, but I haven't given him an answer yet.
Though, my feelings are pretty much decided. Thinking this, I held Ryan's hand that was embracing me. Then, Ryan widened his eyes and then smiled happily.
You have no place here anymore. Or would you prefer I call the police?
At my words, David left, cursing. Apparently, he didn't want the police involved.
About what you said just now. I'll be happy with you and Asher, right?
At my words, Ryan nodded with a smile. And that's when we started dating. Later, I asked Layla's husband to issue a restraining order against David. It seems he had finally snapped at his mother for squandering his earnings and pressuring their lives and kicked her out. Feeling lonely afterward, he sought us out. The ousted mother wandered without a destination and eventually went missing.
It doesn't matter anymore. Because now, I am happy. Luna, it's about time. Yes, I'm coming.
Today is Asher's entrance ceremony. Asher adores Ryan as his dad. Ryan is fully committed to responding to such Asher. To anyone looking, they were a happy family. I'm truly glad to have become a family with the two of them. With that thought, I headed towards them with a smile.
Well, from today onwards, it's your job to take care of 7 of us.
The one standing beyond the open door was my son, whom I hadn't seen for several months. Behind him were his wife and children, standing with large bags. Even though I tried to convey that it was rude to suddenly invade in such large numbers, my son seemed unfazed. His manner of pushing himself in while brushing off my protests was nothing short of terrifying. Why had my son come back? A few months ago, when I criticized my son and his wife for their extravagant spending, my son was the one who called me a greedy old hag and cut off contact. My son, much stronger than me, easily pushed open the door and entered the foyer. There's obviously not enough room for 7 people, right? So, my son extended his arms and firmly grasped my shoulders. Smiling at my wincing from pain, he said, "Once you're done with cleaning and laundry, Mom, you can sleep in the hallway. My name is Mercy, living off a pension at 75, just an ordinary woman. Before marriage, I worked vigorously at a company. Initially, work was enjoyable, and with many women around, there was an understanding of women working overtime. At that time, there was a societal trend of women entering the home upon marriage. However, the company said to me, 'You're doing great work for us, so if possible, we'd like you to stay.' What do you think? It was a fulfilling job, but my husband expressed his wish for me to become a housewife, so I became one upon marriage. I'm also quite skilled at cooking, and by adding a little extra to my usual dishes, I feel like I can make delicious meals like a pro. I've always admired spending time cooking with that extra touch. Becoming a housewife secretly made me happy, thinking, I'll have more time for my hobby of sewing. We only had one child, Neil, but I believe our life as a family of 3 was filled with happy moments. When Neil was young and in the early years of elementary school, I was delighted that he was affectionate. By the time he reached middle school, Neil entered his rebellious phase, distancing himself from me emotionally at times, but he was blessed with good friends. I've heard that the friend he became close to in middle school is still in touch with him. During high school, Neil, influenced by his friends or perhaps thinking about university, focused on his studies. My husband, while holding on to traditional beliefs, cooperatively helped with raising our child, making parenting enjoyable. Blessed with supportive mom friends around me, during times like high school entrance exams and university entrance exams, I had companions to consult with about how to respond to my child, what advice would be best, and what support would help them concentrate on studying. Since my son hadn't saved up for the wedding expenses, I covered most of the costs myself. My husband worked hard and provided for the family, so we never struggled and lived a peaceful life. My hardworking husband, both in his job and with parenting, passed away from illness 5 years ago. Now, I live alone. My income for living comes from my pension and the savings my husband left behind. Using my sewing hobby, I create items and sell them on online marketplaces, earning a small income. With a decent amount of money and no financial worries, besides my hobby, I also volunteer with friends, leading a fulfilling life. Aside from volunteering with friends, we enjoy fun days together, like going out for lunch. My son Neil is now 44 years old. He got married 17 years ago and started a family. His wife, Lisa, is 40 years old. We've known each other since a long time, and I remember she used to have a quiet demeanor back in our student days. But that image changed as our relationship grew longer. Between my sons, they have 3 children. Currently, there's a 14-year-old grandchild, followed by 10 and 8-year-olds. When the grandchildren were small, my son and his wife never really demanded much, and our relationship was good. To ensure I didn't treat her like an unwelcome mother-in-law, I refrained from sudden visits and gave money for celebrations, allowing her to buy whatever she liked. Thanks to that, I thought we maintained a good relationship while keeping a reasonable distance. However, recently, the situation has changed drastically. My daughter-in-law has started demanding gifts for the grandchildren every week and asking for expensive dinners at fancy restaurants almost regularly. While suggesting going out to eat, they don't even make a gesture of taking out their wallets. What's more, they always insist on going to expensive restaurants every single time. But if it were just about the meals, it would have been tolerable. Seeing my grandchildren happily enjoying their food with smiles on their faces made me happy too. Gradually, Lisa started demanding ridiculously expensive accessories that even middle schoolers wouldn't wear. I've known Lisa since my son's high school days, so I know her from way back. During her student days, Lisa was very quiet, neither standing out nor causing any trouble. To see her become so brazen now, I can't help but sigh and think that I misjudged her. She wasn't originally rude, but the moment she felt she could say anything to us, she became domineering. As our relatives got to know her true nature, we gradually distanced ourselves from her. The only reason we still associate with them is that they all have strong personalities. Lisa, who decided I was easy to manipulate, started demanding rings, necklaces, branded wallets, and bags. I once confronted her, asking, "Why do you need such expensive items? These are things only you will use, right?" She insisted that everything was for the children. Starting from the outfit for elementary school PTA meeting to the necessary clothes for class visits. "These clothes can only go with designer name bags," she'd say. But I don't have the luxury to buy designer name bags just for such reasons. When I ignored her requests and brushed them off, she stopped demanding further. Instead, she started aiming for things that were difficult to refuse. She would intrude while I was preparing dinner and say, "Could you make some dishes for our home too?" If I declined, she'd say, "Well, anything will do," and help herself to the fridge, taking away leftovers or just the packs of meat I had recently bought. Strongly trying to stop them, they just laugh it off and say thanks a lot while waving their arms, and then they just leave on their own. Recent behavior of my daughter-in-law makes me wonder if it's normal for her to do such things. While it's common to hear about daughters-in-law being bullied in mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues, is it normal for me, as a mother-in-law, to be so exhausted? Suddenly visiting our home and then demanding meals for the whole family, how audacious. But despite that, they never come for summer vacation or Christmas. During Christmas, they ask for expensive gifts for the grandchildren, gorge on holiday dishes, and then leave without even greeting other relatives. No matter how many times I've warned them, they just brush it off, like one summer. "I didn't bring enough spending money for kids this year, so I'm asking for it for all the kids." When I confronted them strongly, Neil just looked at me with a sigh, even clicked his tongue. To the granny living alone, who took the time to visit and spend time with the grandkids, what's with that tone? Well, forget it then, I won't contact this unreasonable granny anymore. Who's being unreasonable here? Fine, I won't contact you guys either. Don't ever come back. Lisa didn't even look at us and quickly left with the children. Since then, there haven't been as many frequent phone calls or sudden visits. After that, I got even busier with my hobby of sewing and volunteering, and days without involvement with my son continued. Blessed with friends around, we still had enjoyable and busy days, like regularly going out for lunch. I've stopped contacting my son, and peaceful and calm times have passed. Continuing with my hobby of sewing and maintaining the same frequency of volunteering and lunch with friends, I had a moderately stimulating life, and those days were happy. During volunteering, people would say, "Thanks a lot, Mercy," acknowledging me, which made me very happy. I was originally blessed with many friends and a sociable personality. So it became a daily occurrence for my cell phone to ring with messages from friends. When an email came with a ping, signaling another invitation, and the content was always gentle. I couldn't help but smile. About 3 years into our estrangement, the landline at home rang after a long time. The caller was my son. I immediately blocked his number on my cell phone, but I didn't know how to do that with the landline. Until then, we hadn't received any contact, so I wondered what could be happening now. Answering the phone, I heard my son's voice saying, "Hello, Mom?" Then I faintly heard my daughter-in-law asking from the other end, "Did you get through to my mother?" Apparently, my son and his wife were calling together. Neil didn't ask how I was or even say it had been a while. "I need money," he said without any remorse, just laughing. As I was about to hang up in disbelief, I heard Neil's sighing voice. "Actually, Mom, I got fired from my job."
What?
Reacting like that probably wasn't good. Neil must have felt like I was listening because he started rambling quickly. "I had a little health issue, and I made some mistakes during that time. I ended up making some pretty big mistakes, and they told me to take responsibility. So, without even a farewell party, I got fired."
I see. That must have been tough. Hang in there.
Honestly, I couldn't find any words other than "so what?" I can almost predict what my son will say next after losing his job and asking for money. As I was about to abruptly end the conversation and hang up, Neil's desperate voice stopped me. Neil himself seemed to have never expected to be lent money. "If money's a problem, then let's live together again."
What?
Mom, think about it. You, me, and the adorable grandkids can live happily together. We'll save on rent. Isn't this what they call mutual support? I'll be in touch again, and I'll need you to clean the house.
Don't be ridiculous. There's no way I could be happy living with you and the grandkids. You're the one who said you wanted to sever ties with me as your mother, and now you're shamelessly flipping the script because you're in trouble. You should be relying on Lisa. Don't count on me.
Unable to stay silent in the face of such selfishness, I raised my voice for the first time in a while. Then, from a distance, I could hear my daughter-in-law's voice. "I'm already working full-time. But even with 3 kids, we can't make ends meet, so I want to rely on you, mother-in-law. Don't you have any love for your son and grandchildren?"
No, I don't. Living with you would just mean being treated like a maid and having my money drained. I refuse to live together or provide any financial assistance. Don't contact me again.
I slammed the receiver down with a heavy sigh, but the phone immediately started ringing again. Fed up with the incessant ringing, I picked up the receiver between incoming calls. While it meant missing other calls, those with real business would call my cell phone. However, the calls from my son and his wife wouldn't stop. When I put the phone back in the receiver's hands to keep it up, I get a call at a moment's notice. Growing tired of ignoring them, I reached out to a close friend. Then, on a whim, I called my close businessman friend on my cell phone. "Hello? Could you tell me how to block calls on a landline?" Finally restoring peace, 3 months passed by. The house was mostly tidy, so I was making drawstring patches with my sewing. Suddenly, ding-dong went the doorbell. It was unusual for the doorbell to ring at an unplanned time, so I glanced at the monitor showing the front door. There, I saw the faces of my son and his wife. All that crossed my mind was a bad feeling. If my son and his family come inside, they'll just get in the way. Thinking to shoo them away, I said, "I'm busy right now. Please go home." But my son said, "Don't say that. We've come all this way. We have something important to discuss. Please hear us out," as he gestured towards the back. Not only my son's family, but also Lisa's parents were there. My son, his wife, 3 grandchildren, and Lisa's parents, a total of 7 people, came barging in. And they all had carry-on bags and even large luggage with them. It would be awkward to send away not just my son's family but also Lisa's parents. If I were to turn away guests carrying such large luggage, and if there were any argument at the doorstep, I'd be conscious of the neighbors' gaze. Honestly, I didn't want to let them into the house, but reluctantly, I decided to let them into the guest room. I directed my son, his wife, and Lisa's parents to the guest room while the grandchildren were entertained upstairs. I could hear the grandchildren giggling and saying, "This room is so big." Without consulting me at all, my son blurted out, "Mom, let's live together. Look, we've even brought our stuff," as he gestured at the luggage. Instinctively, I said, "Living together is out of the question. Take your things and go home." But such a refusal didn't deter my son. He said, "Mom, we're trying to be good children by living together. We want to give you the joy of taking care of your grandchildren in your old age. Isn't that being filial? Me taking care of you?" in a condescending tone. With a sigh of exasperation, I said, "Listen, as you know, I'm 75 years old. It's impossible for me, at my age, to take care of grandchildren." I was disillusioned by how, despite firmly declining over the phone, it seemed as if it never happened. Relying on a son who only thinks of himself is honestly just unnecessary meddling. "Mercy, Neil's got a point. Living together would be easier for you too. You'd be happy seeing your grandkids every day," they insisted. The thought of living with my son's family made me shudder at how much money I would be drained of and how much effort I would have to put in. Even Lisa chimed in, "Considering your age, Mercy, it would be better for you to live with us. You'll have the joy of spending time with your cute grandkids." I had barely spoken to Lisa's parents since our wedding, let alone seen them. Lisa's parents seemed to spoil her as an only child, and she, in turn, seemed to have been raised with that skewed parental affection. Now even Lisa's parents chimed in, saying, "Hey, Mercy, let's cooperate since we're all getting older." Truly typical of Lisa's parents. They must have had a significant influence on her personality. Despite not knowing what kind of life they led, they seemed insistent on echoing Lisa's words. Perhaps feeling empowered by their numbers, Neil joked, "Being the one to give our dear old mom the joy of caring for a lively family in her short twilight years makes me the model son, right?" I couldn't help but wonder if Neil and Lisa were trying to repay me for what I'd done for them all these years. It infuriated me how they seemed to forget that I had been the one covering the expenses for the grandkids, using my money as if it were limitless, all in the name of because Lisa wants it or because Neil needs it. And Lisa's parents seemed to back her every word. "Hey Mercy, our Lisa is a smart girl. Let's go along with what Lisa says," they said, smiling too sweetly. That overly sweet smile started to give me an uneasy feeling. So, I've made sure to avoid getting involved with Lisa's parents. It's precisely because we haven't met since the wedding that their audacity to intervene so boldly now leaves me not just bewildered but feeling downright brazen. Lisa's parents had quite the nerve. "Mom, we're here to stay, and we're going to live together. You'll be happy. Starting today, we'll be living in this house," my son said, grinning. He then continued, "We need your room, so from today, you'll be sleeping in the hallway," he said, dismissing me. To add insult to injury, his wife Lisa joined in with a thin smile, saying, "Please take care of us, mother-in-law." I didn't want to be manipulated any further by my son's family or Lisa's parents. With that thought in mind, I pushed past them and returned to my room upstairs. In just a few minutes, I was ready to leave, carrying my suitcase downstairs, much to the surprise of my son's family and Lisa's parents. "I'm leaving, so do as you please," I said, leaving my son speechless. Neil asked, "But what about the household chores here?" And Lisa panicked, "Yes, exactly, I thought I'd finally be free from chores." Upon hearing those words, I realized they intended to treat me like a maid. The audacity of Neil, who had been fired and had no job, and Lisa, who couldn't cover the family's living expenses with just her part-time job, left me speechless. And Lisa's parents, who came along as a package deal, were clearly too much to handle. I told my son and his wife, "I've already sold this house because managing it alone became too difficult. If you want to live here, you'll need to buy it back." My son and his wife seemed puzzled by what I was saying. Continuing, I said, "Originally, I planned to move from this house and have been preparing for it for the past 3 months." To which my son replied, "But there are still things in this guest room. I continued, we originally planned to move out of this house and had been preparing for 3 months, to which my son replied, you have all your things in this guest room. Well, those were meant to be disposed of last. Most of the things here were unnecessary for the new house. What wasn't needed was naturally discarded. What was necessary, I took to the new house, I explained. If Neil and you want to live here, you'll have to buy back this house. Well, since it was well maintained and close to the station, it won't be cheap, I added. Since the guest room only had a low table and simple interior, my son didn't seem to notice at all. I had arranged for the removal company to take away all the items in the guest room once I had finished unpacking. So there were only reception items in the guest room. Then the son and his wife came to me and said, Mom, I'm your precious son. Aren't the kids cute grandchildren to you? And pleaded with tears. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. To Neil, I said, my dear sons disappeared 3 years ago. Why are you telling me this now? You should just go back to your home. I'm not obliged to take care of a 44-year-old grown-up son now. Upon hearing that, the son said, we've already canceled the apartment we were living in. Because without a job, we can't pay the rent. Life is tough with Lisa's income. We have no choice but to rely on you, Mom. Even if they say that, I'm not obliged to support not only my son's family but also Lisa's parents. To my son's words, I retorted, what are you talking about? It's fine if you find a job, and if Lisa continues her full-time job, you can manage your life. Instead of making excuses for being unemployed, go and find a job. You're the breadwinner, Neil, it's up to you. My child-rearing days are over. There's no obligation to support Neil now. My son also said, maybe because I can't find a job right away, you think I'm asking for your help, he said, angry. Well then, why don't you ask Lisa's parents for help? They are understanding people for Lisa, and it would be easier for Neil to live with them, I said. Lisa said, our parents sold their house and came here. We have nowhere else to go. As for me, I said, this house is no longer mine. If you want it, you'll have to go to a real estate agent and buy it. Seeing the situation of my sons, I thought they really had nowhere else to go. Well, it seems my son and his wife have no home to return to. However, this is not a home for Neil either. I can only say I'm amazed at my son and his wife. I was shocked to realize that they really thought they could live with me without my consent. It's outrageous that Lisa's parents are also coming to live in my house, along with my son and his wife. And then, Lisa's parents also said, if you're also a parent, isn't it natural to take care of your son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren? How shameless can Lisa's parents be? But just because of that, I'm not obligated to take care of Lisa's parents. Besides, if you're also parents, why don't you take care of your daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren? Moreover, Neil and I cut ties 3 years ago. I consider my son already dead. So, I don't want to be relied on now. This house is already sold, and the next one is a one-room apartment. There's no space for you, I said sarcastically and bitterly. Even though I have a volunteering spirit, my heart is not so big as to support my estranged son and his wife. I'm helpless as long as I don't have a home. And for me, living on a pension, there's nothing I can do for Neil and his family. I'm too preoccupied with my own retirement plans. Certainly, our longtime home holds many memories with my husband. Even though it was a better time than now, how hard my husband worked to buy this house. And not only my husband, but also many cherished memories with Neil. Now they are nostalgic memories that bring tears to my eyes. Is it irresponsible as a parent to disown the only son we raised with care? But Neil is already over 40, married, and has 3 children. If parents still have responsibility even in such a case, then surely I must have been wrong in my child rearing. While my heart aches heavily, Neil and his wife are blaming each other. It seems no one had anticipated that I would sell this house under any circumstance. Indeed, it's risky for me, in my 70s, to sell a fully paid-off house. Honestly, if my relationship with Neil and his family hadn't deteriorated, I wouldn't have done such a thing. Seemingly forgetting about me entirely, both Lisa and her parents were furious at their son-in-law Neil. "It's Neil's fault for lying, all the blame lies with Neil," said Lisa's parents, angry. Lisa was furious, saying, "Didn't you confirm with Dad that we would never sell the house full of his memories? Isn't the plan ruined now?" Actually, the landlord of the apartment where my son and his wife lived was a very close friend of mine from a long time ago. Knowing that the landlord of Neil's apartment was a friend, I had been curious since Neil mentioned living together 3 months ago, so I decided to give my friend a call. What I heard from my friend was that, actually, my son had been discussing giving up the apartment for the past 4 months. To be honest, I was dumbfounded by my son's actions, but I was glad to know about their plans beforehand. Furthermore, I learned from my friend, who is also the landlord, that my son had said, "I want to live with Mom and let her take care of the kids a little. I want to take care of her while she's still healthy." Knowing this, I prepared various alternatives to avoid living with my son and his family. At my current age of 75, I simply don't have the energy to take care of my endlessly energetic children. And I can foresee being burdened with household chores when my son and his wife come over. Not only that, but I also felt a sense of crisis that if we lived together, I would not only be responsible for taking care of my son and his family but also be financially exploited as their ATM. For about a week, I thought about what kind of environment would be comfortable for me to live in. I considered whether I could live happily while considering my physical capabilities. This house is too big for me to manage living alone. I'm still struggling to manage it even now. After much consideration, I decided to sell this house and move into residential facility for elderly. Since the senior living facility is not as spacious as a standalone house, I had to move out the necessary items. I needed to dispose of things that wouldn't fit into the senior living facility, but with my wide circle of friends, it was easy. I sold items such as furniture, clothes, antiques, and even many books left behind by my late husband to secondhand stores. I donated everything I hadn't used in years and items suitable for the Volunteer Facilities Bazaar, which helped with the organization. I went to the city office and obtained the necessary paperwork for the move and received information about what was needed. I completed most of the moving procedures and preparations 4 days ago. As I finished the remaining procedures for electricity, gas, water, etc., it was a nostalgic moment when I was at the beloved house. Just as I was about to leave the house after bidding it farewell, my son showed up. As I was leaving the house, my grandchildren, who had been playing upstairs, seemed to have overheard my conversation with my son and peeked their heads out. Encouraged by their parents' looks, my grandchildren, especially the 14-year-old, said, "Grandma, abandoning us and Dad like this is heartless." Then he continued, "Grandma should live with us since she's all alone. And she should give all her money to Dad and Mom." Hearing this, my grandchildren, ages 10 and 7, said, "That's right. That's right," and they said it as if their son and his wife had been well educated. Listening to my grandchildren's comments, I couldn't help but wonder where I went wrong in raising my son. However, my choices regarding Neil and Lisa were mine to make. Still, seeing my grandchildren's reactions, I knew they would face challenges in the future, but it was beyond my control and knowledge. In an attempt to reason with my grandchildren, I suggested, "Why don't you ask Lisa's parents for help? There's no need for me to be involved." My son argued, "Lisa's parents have no savings, and they barely scrape by on their pensions. It's impossible for them. Having our family here would ensure you have a good life, Mom." I sighed in exasperation. Neil is an adult. He should find a job while Lisa works part-time. If Lisa works, she could rent an apartment in her name. Neil's old landlord is willing to keep the apartment vacant for a while since we won't be living here. If Lisa's part-time job and Neil's unemployment can secure the house loan, then you can buy back the house, I advised. After leaving the house, I contacted a real estate agent. At my age, I just want to live within my means. Subsequently, it seems my son's family tried to reclaim the house I sold. It seems Neil tried to repurchase the house, which holds memories for him, by visiting a real estate agency. He provided his former family's address and said, "I want to buy this property." Since it's a significant purchase, there's a loan assessment involved. Unfortunately, it seems the loan application, based solely on Lisa's part-time job, didn't pass. With a son who's unemployed, they couldn't even discuss a loan. The house, with its good condition and location, was too expensive to buy back, and it seems Neil's budget couldn't keep up, making it impossible to purchase it with a loan over their budget. Indeed, it was too expensive for an unemployed son and a wife with a part-time job. They persuaded the landlord of the apartment where the family previously lived, accommodating a total of 7 people, including Lisa's parents. While the landlord secured his income, he expressed concerns about avoiding any issues, stating, "Neighborhood disputes are the most troublesome." Despite living on the landlord's goodwill, the apartment feels cramped for 7 people, especially with young children, causing considerable stress. Furthermore, living in a small space with Lisa's parents adds even more stress, leading to frustration in their daily lives. A friend who lives near Neil's apartment informed me that Neil and Lisa are visibly struggling. Although Neil found a full-time job, I heard that his lack of qualifications results in a meager salary. With the money from selling the house, the savings my husband left, and my monthly pension, I can afford a reasonably good elderly-friendly apartment. I enjoy my hobbies like sewing, volunteering, and dining with friends, leading a content life. The environment hasn't changed much, and I feel peaceful and happy. Joining a gateball club after moving to the senior apartment has brought me more enjoyable moments than before. Having more friends from the gateball club makes each day enjoyable. Additionally, I've formed a close bond with a gentleman, adding excitement to my life, making each day feel fresh. I am not thinking of getting married now, but it has been a happy time for me to be of service to someone else. I was happy to be having a good time with someone who is good to me. I hope I can continue to be as energetic and happy as I am now. My name is Olivia Smith, and I'm 32 years old. I'm a working wife, juggling my job with household chores. My husband James is also employed, and we got married 3 years ago but haven't been able to have children yet. Because of this, we recently visited an OB/GYN, where both of us underwent tests. It turned out that I have a condition making it difficult for me to conceive. Since then, I've been trying to balance work and housework while starting fertility treatments. However, James hasn't been supportive. "Hey, isn't dinner ready yet? I'm starving here." It's a failure as a wife not to have dinner ready when your husband gets home. As soon as James comes home from work, he starts complaining. It can't be helped, I just got home from work too. James, don't just leave everything to me, help out with the chores sometimes.
Huh? Why should I? I'm the breadwinner here. Besides, chores are a woman's job. Don't try to push them onto me. If you've got time to complain, get dinner made.
Stuck in his old ways, James demands that I make dinner. He's always like this. In this day and age, chores should be shared between spouses, you know? If all you're gonna do is watch TV when you get home, the least you could do is help out a little.
Oh, forget it. I didn't think you were so incapable of handling chores. If you don't feel like making dinner, I'll just eat out. I won't be back until morning, so just get yourself something. What? You're gonna spend the night at the bar again? It's bad for your health and a waste of money, I've told you to stop.
He's always been fond of alcohol and gambling, and used to go out on his days off. But lately, he's started visiting bars even on weekdays after work. Yet, James doesn't listen to a word I say and goes out anyway. The next day, he leaves for work without a word as if nothing happened. I sigh deeply, feeling despair in our marriage. A few days later, on a day off for both of us, James was unusually at home watching TV. He still didn't help with the chores, but for a moment, I felt happy. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, so I rushed to open the door. There stood Gianna Smith, my mother-in-law. Oh, it's you, Gianna, you're here today, too. Well, hello, Olivia. You seem rather troubled to see me. Well, never mind. Saying so, Gianna briskly walked into the house, heading for the living room where James was. James, I came for a visit. Are you doing well? Are you getting your meals properly? Mom? What, you came again today? You don't need to come so often. Oh, both of you with your again today. Don't treat your mother like a nuisance, please. And besides, the last time I came was 3 days ago. I'm just checking in because I'm looking forward to having grandchildren, but it's been so long. Despite her sarcasm, Gianna smiles elegantly. She lives alone in a house not too far from ours. Perhaps because she's so eager for grandchildren, she's been coming over to check on us more frequently. So, when are you going to give me grandchildren, Olivia? Ever since my husband passed away, that's all I've been looking forward to. If this keeps up, you won't be able to have children because of your age. Before you finish your duty as a woman, let me see my grandchild's face soon. Yes, of course. I also want to have a child soon. I'm really trying right now. Then hurry up. I'm getting older, and I don't have much time left, you know? Despite the sarcasm and pressure from my mother-in-law, Gianna, I can't speak up against her. Part of it is because she's my mother-in-law, but also because she used to bully me. At the beginning of our marriage, James suggested we live with Gianna at the Smith family home. But right after we moved in, I started facing harassment from Gianna. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and convinced James to move out a few months later. I want to see my cute grandchild's face as soon as possible. Don't dilly-dally. You want to have children, right? Why can't you? You're not doing this to spite me, are you? Gianna blames me relentlessly for not being able to have children. The fact is, I haven't told her we're undergoing fertility treatments. I could already see her getting furious. But if I don't tell her, she'll keep visiting our home forever. I decided to take this opportunity to confess to Gianna. Gianna, actually, I'm undergoing fertility treatment. I have a condition that makes it difficult for me to conceive. What did you say? What did you just say? Gianna suddenly became furious, as if she turned into a different person. I never thought you'd be so useless. Unbelievable. Shame on you for being a woman. I lowered my head in fear as she yelled at me. Then, Gianna turned to James and began to say something outrageous. James. Find a mistress. A wife who can't show me my grandchild's face is useless. What? I was shocked and my eyes went wide. But this was just the beginning. James then revealed something even more shocking. Okay. But actually, I already have a mistress. Olivia couldn't have children, and she tried to push the chores onto me. So, I got a mistress a few months ago. What? I was stunned by James' bold confession. Wait a minute. You cheated on me for that reason. While I was working hard on treatment and juggling work and chores. Unbelievable. Good for you. Divorce Olivia right now and marry your mistress. I'm so proud of my excellent son. Finally, I'll get to see my grandchild's face. That's the plan. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mom. So, Olivia. Divorce me. No. Why should I divorce you for such an unreasonable reason? James. Cheating on me, that's terrible. You betrayed me. Stop whining. Just sign the divorce papers now. I've had them prepared for a while. Sign here. He went to his room, came back with the divorce papers, and thrust them in front of me. Of course, I refused, but James restrained me. Gianna forced a pen into my right hand and made me sign the divorce papers against my will. There, that's done. Now, James just has to sign, and the divorce will be final. All right, let's go to the city hall. We'll sign there and submit it right away. Olivia, this is goodbye. It was short, but well, it wasn't too bad. I'll submit this, and you better have packed your bags and left by the time I get back. Saying this, James and Gianna happily left the house with the divorce papers. I was in shock and couldn't move for a while. But since they told me to leave the house, I started packing my things first. Afterwards, despite feeling angry and sad, I decided to accept the divorce. I quietly left the house before James could return. About 5 years later, I had fully recovered and was enjoying my life. Today, I decided to visit a newly opened shopping mall to do some shopping in the afternoon. Standing in a corner of the large store, 2 people suddenly appeared in front of me. They were the last people I thought I'd ever see again. Olivia. Is that you, Olivia? Wow, it's been a long time. Oh, isn't that Olivia? Long time no see. You look surprisingly well. Still leading a sad life without children? The people were my ex-husband James and his mother, Gianna. Long time no see. I'm glad you're doing well. As for me, I'm enjoying a happy life. James seems pretty miserable though. Anything happen? No, it's just nothing. He's just a bit tired. More importantly, it seems like you're enjoying your single life. It's really tragic that you can't experience the joy of being a woman. Good for you for seeming happy. She continued to look down on me unabashed. You know, we left things on bad terms, do you remember? I'm surprised you can just come up and talk to me like this. Well, yes. But we intended to part on good terms, didn't we? Seems like you're the only one holding on to any bitterness. Tough for you. We've been living peacefully without a care in the world. Right, James? Yeah, sure. James didn't seem convinced. Olivia, you're still single, right? Good to see you're not looking haggard. You must be happy, but I guess it's lonely without me suddenly gone. If you ever need anything, feel free to get in touch, okay? What? Why are you saying this all of a sudden? James, what are you talking about? You don't need to worry about her. Just leave this useless woman alone. You can't have kids, can't get married, it's a bit pitiful, really. I felt odd hearing James being kind after so long. Though his attitude intrigued me, it was no longer my concern. Could you, maybe go somewhere else? I'm waiting for someone, and they should be here any minute. That's when I wanted to leave the situation behind. Mommy! Olivia. Sorry to keep you waiting. I made sure to buy everything we forgot. A girl and a man were running towards me from behind, calling out to me. James and Gianna were stunned, unable to grasp the situation. Olivia, who are these people? Friends or something? That girl just called you mom, didn't she? Wait, surely not. Yes, this is my new husband, Luca, and our 4-year-old daughter. After divorcing James, I quickly remarried and had her. Isn't she adorable? What? A new husband and daughter? What's going on here? James and Gianna were shocked and started panicking. Actually, after the divorce, I married my coworker Luca. Olivia, you said you were single. I can't believe you remarried. Why did you lie? I never said I was single. Maybe that's just something you misunderstood on your own. I can't believe it. You were supposed to be infertile. I get it, they must be adopted or stepchildren, right? That's the only explanation. Actually, I just have a condition that makes it hard to conceive, and she's neither a stepchild nor adopted. After you forced me into that divorce, I became emotionally weak. I went back to my parents' house, took time off work, and shut myself in for a while. But then, one day, Luca came to my parents' house. He looked after me until I recovered. Luca visited my parents' house whenever he had time while I was recovering, offering me encouragement. Thanks to him, I quickly got better and regained my spirits. He then confessed to me that he wanted me to be in a relationship with him on the premise of marriage. It turns out he had liked me for a while. Moved by his earnest support, I started to feel the same way and accepted his proposal. A few months later, we got married, and, fortunately, we were blessed with a daughter that year. By the way, we had our daughter before we got married. It was so easy to get pregnant, it was like we had no idea we were going through fertility treatments. I wonder if she really didn't want James to be her father? I knew Olivia had difficulties conceiving, but I was so happy we could welcome a new family member so soon. Luca and I shared a shy laugh together. Perhaps unable to stand our happiness, James showed his true colors.
That's unbelievable. There must be some mistake. You couldn't have children at all when you were married to me. There's no way you could get pregnant so soon after remarrying. And before getting married, that timing is too perfect. That daughter must be mine, right? You must have been pregnant before we divorced. It has to be true. Is that true? She does look a bit like James. Why did you hide it? If you were pregnant, I would have never let you divorce him.
Suddenly faced with their absurd claims, I was taken aback. Please don't jump to conclusions. And stop bringing up the past in front of Luca. Our daughter is undoubtedly Luca's and mine. Why are you so desperate? James hung his head and began to explain. Actually, after we divorced, I tried to remarry my mistress right away. But she was only with me for my money. Once she found out I was nearly broke from gambling, she disappeared. Without a partner and pressured by my mother who desperately wants grandchildren. I've been searching for someone. But I haven't found anyone. He said that even after his mistress ran away, he tried hard to find someone else. It seems his liking for gambling and alcohol made it difficult for him to maintain any relationships. As he got older and less attractive, James started to panic. He even tried marriage consulting services and flirting on his mother's advice. But he's just not appealing. Despite having a good face, it's strange, right? Despite all our efforts, it's ineffective, they all run away quickly. We came to the mall today to try flirting. Flirting. This is a place for all sorts of people to shop, right? I can't imagine coming here to scope out women. I looked at James and Gianna with a cold gaze. But Gianna acted as if it was perfectly normal. It can't be helped, can it? Since he can't find a partner. We just want to see grandchildren soon, didn't think it would be this hard. Maybe forcing James and Olivia to divorce was a mistake. Olivia, you still loved me, even with all my faults. I realized that only after our divorce. I'm sorry for kicking you out just because we couldn't have children. I truly am sorry. James expressed regret for letting me go and seemed genuinely remorseful. Hearing his apology felt like vindication for the humiliation I endured 5 years ago. However, Gianna hadn't learned her lesson. But it's good we came to the mall today. Because we ran into Olivia, who once loved James. If she can have children, there's still a chance. Olivia, leave your new husband and remarry James. Then, have a child with him.
Yeah, that's right. It's easier than finding someone new. Olivia, you still love me more than him, right? Let's start over. And have a child. That way, my mom will stop nagging me. It's been really tough.
I was speechless at James and Gianna's suggestion. What are you thinking? Of course, the answer is no. I'm in love with Luca now, and I haven't forgiven you for your actions. There's zero chance, but even if by some miracle I were to divorce, I would never get back together with James.
What are you talking about? Meeting again in the same place like this must be fate. The fact that my ex-wife was here where I was trying to flirt means we must remarry. It would actually be rude not to. Such a chance is rare. You should go back to James, whom you once loved, rather than your new husband. Ah, finally, I'll be able to meet my grandchild. Let's go to the city hall right now and start the paperwork. Come on, Olivia, quickly. Wait, stop. Don't push this further. I'm not going to the city hall. Let go.
James and Gianna once again pushed their agenda selfishly. And as they tried to drag me to the city hall by force, it was clear they were driven not by love, but by their desire for children. Remembering the humiliation I suffered in the past, anger surged within me, and I trembled. And so, I decided to execute a plan for revenge against them.
After seeing James and Gianna's attitudes, I've made up my mind. I've been reluctant because I really didn't want to see you again, but soon I'll be asking for compensation through a lawyer.
What? Huh? James and Gianna were shocked. Compensation? For what? Don't tell me, it's about the affair? What's going on all of a sudden? You can't just demand compensation without any evidence. Don't scare an old woman like that. You found out about James's affair right before you divorced, didn't you? You shouldn't have any evidence.
No, I've been keeping evidence of the affair safe. I didn't say anything, but I had my suspicions about James's infidelity for a while. I intentionally kept silent, waiting for the right moment to confront him. And that moment is now. By the way, I also have evidence of your harassment, Gianna.
What? How did you get such evidence? Actually, I had been suspicious of James's infidelity while we were undergoing fertility treatments. James had been sneaking out not just for work or gambling. At that time, by chance, I had a day off from work, so I followed him. As a result, I witnessed James on a date, looking cozy with a woman who seemed to be his mistress. I continued to follow them and captured photos and videos. These pieces of evidence are still safely stored in my room.
By the way, Gianna, I obtained evidence of your harassment every time you visited our home. I installed security cameras inside the house and kept the data. Your nasty comments and harassment are all recorded. If I submit these pieces of evidence to a lawyer, they can start the claim right away. No, stop that. We're already running low on savings because of James's attempts at finding a partner, and on top of that, James has been spending all his money on gambling and alcohol. Mom's been pressuring me to remarry, adding to my stress. The divorce was her idea in the first place. It's not my fault. Please, just forget about the compensation claim.
Gianna and James tried to use tears to stop the claim, but I didn't relent.
After what you put me through, and now you're telling me to divorce my current husband? There's a limit to selfishness. You've completely disregarded my feelings. I have no intention of getting back with James, and I will demand compensation. This is what you get for letting me go. Just accept it gracefully. Wait! Let's talk this out. We admit we were wrong about this. We're sorry. We're offering you a chance to remarry James as an apology. Let's reconcile and start over.
I've met many women, but none compare to Olivia. I still love you. I'm even willing to accept that 4-year-old daughter of yours. So, let's get back together, okay? Ignoring my opinion, they kept pressing for a reconciliation. Just as James was about to grab my arm, Luca, who had been watching the situation, finally intervened. Listening to you guys, what's going on here? What do you think you're doing to my wife? I've heard about the past from Olivia, but this is beyond what I imagined. Luca pulled my arm away from James and glared at him sharply. James flinched but retorted defiantly.
What? Don't get in the way. We're desperate here. My mom's getting older, and I want to show her her grandchild. Don't meddle in our family matters.
What is filial piety in forcing your ex-wife, whom you abandoned, to get back together with you? You are simply being coerced by your mother. Even if you still love Olivia, I won't allow it.
What are you doing, interfering with our love life? That's so rude. Just back off. That should be our line. You're the ones being unreasonable. And just so you remember, this is a public place. It's bad for our daughter to see such immature behavior, so could you please stop?
Hearing this, James and Gianna came to their senses and looked around. Being in a shopping mall, various people were watching us. Naturally, my daughter was also watching them, scared, and I quickly hugged her to comfort her. If we continue like this, it could lead to police involvement, you know? I can call them right now if you'd like. I glared at them as I issued the warning. James and Gianna's faces turned pale, and they started to panic.
Wait, hold on. Don't be hasty. If we get arrested, we can't pay any compensation. My life would be over, and you'd only be harming yourself.
That's not true. If we leave it to a lawyer, they'll handle it. Plus, if it means the end of your life, I couldn't be happier. Olivia, don't say such terrible things.
What's wrong with you? Planning to abandon James? And trying to squeeze money out of him? I never thought you could be so cruel.
If anything, I was the one abandoned. And it's not like I'm trying to squeeze money out of him. As we were arguing, security guards, alerted by the commotion, came over. What's going on here? Oh, sorry, could you detain this family here? They've been persistently bothering us. These people are stalking my wife. Please arrest them. We pointed at James and Gianna. They began to panic but then started making outrageous claims.
No, you've got it all wrong. We just came to get my wife back. My beloved wife was kidnapped by this unknown man, and we came to rescue her. If you're going to arrest anyone, it should be him. That girl is my granddaughter. She was kidnapped along with my son's wife. Security guard, please do something about it.
Huh? Oh. Confused by their claims, the security guard questioned. Please don't worry. I haven't been kidnapped. Well, these people are my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. They're trying to force a reconciliation. If it's difficult for you to decide, we can call the police and explain the situation. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. I see you're dealing with a complicated situation. We'll contact the police for you. Saying that, the security guard reached for his radio. At this, James and Gianna immediately began to panic.
This is bad. If they call the police, we'll be in trouble. We have to run. I don't want to get caught up in this mess. Wait, James! Don't leave me behind!
James and Gianna quickly left the scene. Their pathetic exit made both Luca and me laugh quietly. Finally getting my revenge on them, I felt a great sense of relief. Later, as I had promised, I submitted the evidence to a lawyer. I filed for compensation against both James and Gianna. According to the lawyer I hired, at first, they refused to pay, claiming they couldn't afford it. However, they ultimately accepted the claim and later paid me the compensation. But one day, it seems the news of James's affair had somehow spread throughout his workplace. Furthermore, the story of him pressuring me for reconciliation at the mall became known among his coworkers. Quickly, his misconduct became public knowledge, and the story reached the company president. James was called in by the president and reportedly received a severe reprimand. To prevent tarnishing the company's image, he was fired. Losing his job, James went back to his parents' house to report to Gianna. She was furious and scolded James before reluctantly starting to work part-time. Despite working steadily, perhaps due to her age, she often fell ill. Yet, she continued to work hard to pay off the debt. James also attempted to find new employment while working part-time. But it was challenging due to his age. During this time, his penchant for gambling didn't seem to have changed. Whenever he has free time, he seems to squander money, and his debt is only increasing. Eventually, Gianna strictly forbade James from gambling. With his hobby restricted and having given up on finding a new job, James reluctantly juggled multiple part-time jobs. Currently, they are slowly repaying their debt. As for me, I'm living a happy life with Luca and our daughter. Since we received the compensation, we have financial security and peace of mind. Although things didn't work out with Gianna, Luca's parents have been different. We get along very well, and recently, we had a barbecue party at their house. If Gianna hadn't been obsessed with having a grandchild, we might have been able to get along in a similar manner. But James and everything associated with him are just part of my past now.
From now on, I've decided to completely forget the past and cherish my current family.
One morning, suddenly, my father-in-law who I lived with passed away. I was always ignored, so honestly, I don't feel sad. My mother-in-law and Benjamin headed to prepare the venue earlier, and as I was getting ready, I heard Jackson making a phone call in the hallway.
I married her out of pity because she can't have kids. It's basically charity.
I gasped.
And yet, she's so arrogant it's infuriating. Pretending to be Benjamin's mother when she's nothing but a maid.
He laughed then.
We'll have her cover the funeral cost. With that money, I'll buy a high-end bag for you. Charlotte wanted one, right?
He continued talking, unaware that I was listening in the hallway. Trying to maintain my composure, my body trembled with rage.
I'll put an end to this. This person is neither family nor anything to me. I'll let out all the pent-up frustration I've been holding back.
He's mistaken if he thinks I'll always be docile. I am Madison, a 50-year-old housewife. I married Jackson 11 years ago, and have been living with my stepson Benjamin and my in-laws since. The reason Jackson and I met was through a mutual friend. After being dumped by my fiancé because of infertility, feeling depressed, a friend, feeling sorry for me, organized a gathering with their friends for drinks. Jackson was not very talkative but seemed sincere. We found common ground in our love for movies, and he was the one who suggested we start dating with marriage in mind. His ex-wife was into gambling, racked up debt, and left, abandoning her young son. When I heard he was looking for a mother for his son, I met Benjamin on one of our dates. Benjamin, without any shyness, quickly took a liking to me. Later, when I was introduced to my in-laws, they seemed like nice people, and by our one-year anniversary, I strongly desired to become part of Jackson's family. But looking back, it was clear that Jackson and my in-laws had been deceiving me all along. Fooled, I had a simple wedding and started living with Jackson and Benjamin. Shortly after getting married, Jackson asked me to become a full-time housewife. I enjoyed my clerical job and wanted to continue, but he was persistent.
I want you to focus on Benjamin. You can return to work once he's a bit older.
All right. I could see where Jackson was coming from. After all, I was inexperienced in raising children. The idea of raising someone else's child properly was also a source of anxiety for me. I sought advice from friends who had children, and desperately gathered information from the internet and parenting books. Initially, Benjamin seemed affectionate towards me, but as he grew older, he started to assert his independence and eventually began to talk back. Instead of consoling me, Jackson would mock me with a smirk.
Seems like a real mom is different. After all, you're just a stranger. Stop it! Why do you have to say things like that?
When I objected, Jackson raised his eyebrows in surprise.
What's wrong with telling the truth?
Jackson was always out, either at work or drinking with colleagues. He completely dumped childcare on me, yet all he did was make snide remarks. And whenever Benjamin did something he didn't like, he blamed it all on me.
Crying all the time is because of Madison's bad parenting. Got a cold again? Probably malnutrition. It's because you feed him instant food for lunch.
He'd get cranky teaching multiplication to Benjamin, who had just started elementary school, complaining about his slow learning.
He's just learned addition. Multiplication is too soon for him.
When I protested, Jackson laughed as if he was astonished.
I was able to do middle school work at his age. Looks like Madison's stupidity has rubbed off on him.
He'd smirk at me, saying, "Well, you're just a high school grad, right?" When Benjamin was around 8 years old, we started living with his parents. This was never part of the plan, but it suddenly came up because of my mother-in-law's deteriorating health.
I was told I have high blood pressure at a medical checkup.
I need to undergo treatment and follow a diet. Hearing this, Jackson suggested they move in with us.
It'll be easier if you come to our place. Mom doesn't have a driver's license, and it's tough to go to appointments, right? Madison can drive you.
I couldn't believe my ears. It's one thing if he were to help, but why try to play the filial son at my expense? He did that without even asking me.
Oh, is that okay? That'd be a great help. We were struggling with the cost of remodeling the house. Great. Once you've sold the house, you can move in any time.
I was flabbergasted by Jackson's audacity.
This house is my inheritance from my parents, you know.
After hanging up the phone, Jackson nonchalantly informed me.
So, my parents are moving in, just so you know. Just so I know? Don't decide things on your own. Talk to me first. It's my house.
Jackson made a displeased face.
You don't like living with my parents? It's not that. It's natural for a wife to take care of her mother-in-law. You're free anyway, so be useful.
My opinion was completely ignored, and soon the living with his parents began. Living together meant being at the mercy of my mother-in-law. She would complain about the weather, feeling sluggish, or just not in the mood. She used these as excuses to avoid going to the hospital.
Then let's not go. You're okay with your illness getting worse? What a terrible person.
On the other hand, if I insisted too much on going, she'd get annoyed at being nagged. Once finally in the car, it was a barrage of complaints.
Your driving is reckless. Drive safely. Don't drive so slow. Speed it up.
As soon as we got home, she sat on the sofa and started complaining.
I got car sick because of you. Why are you so bad at driving?
She could use the bus that goes from the nearest bus stop right to the hospital. But I guess she thinks the bus fare is a waste of money. Not just for doctor visits, my mother-in-law complains about the house too.
This house feels so old-fashioned. Are you sure it was remodeled? It's uncomfortable not being designed for two families.
And that's her line, even though she's the one imposing on us. My father-in-law had his quirks too. Even when Jackson and his mother criticized me, he wouldn't join in, so I thought he was on my side, but it seemed he just wanted to avoid conflict. Proof of that is, he wouldn't respond to greetings, and when he did talk to me, it was only to ask what's for dinner, or is the bathroom clean, as if he wanted to interact with me as little as possible, and then I found out he spends his days at gambling or going to the races. If he's got that much free time, I really wish he'd drive my mother-in-law to her appointments. After all, she is his wife. My mother-in-law also had a lot to say about the meals I prepared. His parents prefer a fish-based diet. However, Jackson and Benjamin like stronger flavors, so I have to prepare different menus for them. As if that wasn't hard enough, my mother-in-law needs a low-sodium diet, so I end up making 3 different meals for 5 people. Without knowing how much trouble I go through planning the menu every day, my mother-in-law complained.
This is bland. I can't eat something this tasteless. You're doing this to spite me, aren't you? What a mean daughter-in-law. When it's low in salt, it's naturally going to be bland. Please bear with it.
Then my mother-in-law complained to Jackson.
Jackson, Madison is being horrible to me.
Jackson looked annoyed at my mother-in-law's complaint.
Make something tastier. If you say so, why don't you cook?
When I said that, caring yet firm, my mother-in-law glared at me.
A wife talking back to her husband. Anyway, please bear with the bland taste. Making excuses for your poor cooking skills.
Despite having pushed the cooking onto me because she can't cook, it seems she doesn't have a shred of gratitude. Slowly, I started to feel disillusioned with Jackson always siding with my mother-in-law. One day, as I was walking back from shopping, I stopped in my tracks when I overheard my mother-in-law talking. I wondered what she was discussing, but she was actually spreading bad things about me to the neighbors.
My daughter-in-law is so defiant. Living off Jackson's salary, yet she's always talking back to me and Jackson. Does she even understand her place? Really? lazing around at home without working, always neglecting the housework. She pushes cleaning and laundry onto me and does nothing. Listening in from behind a fence, I was dumbfounded. Ever since we started living together, my mother-in-law hasn't even washed a single cup. Looks like this daughter-in-law is a dud too. It's bad for Benjamin's upbringing. Jackson too, but your grandson is the biggest victim here. Poor thing. The resident's tone of pity made my mother-in-law dramatically lament. See, it's me. Stressed out by being bossed around by her, and now my stomach hurts. You've had a tough time. Don't push yourself too hard. I finally understood. No wonder I've been avoided by the neighbors recently. I clenched my fists, calming my anger with great effort, and took the long way home. That evening, when Jackson came home, I confronted him about my mother-in-law's actions. Don't you think spreading rumors is a bit much? He was just agreeing with what the neighbors said. Jackson made a face of disgust. You just need to improve your cooking skills. I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, just try to get along, will you? I was driven by a sense of helplessness and anger. Do I have to keep enduring these snide remarks every day? When Benjamin became a teenager, he hit his rebellious phase. Having grown up seeing Jackson and my in-laws look down on me, it was natural that he would mock me. He hurled insults at me like it was nothing. Wash my gym clothes by today. I need them for tomorrow. Leftovers for lunch? That's just being lazy. You're a stay-at-home wife, you have time to make something proper. I hate this brand of stock. Know my preferences at least. You're useless. Despite relying on me for everything, he was always finding faults. And unbelievably, he would kick me out of the house when his friends came over. Stay out of sight. It'd be fine if you were beautiful, but having an old hag like you around is embarrassing. This is my house. Don't get cocky. You're eating off my dad's salary, aren't you? Jackson and the in-laws, who were nearby, didn't seem to care at all. Furious, I finally scolded Benjamin. If you keep up this attitude, I'll stop taking care of you altogether. Abandoning your child? You're a failure as a mother. Benjamin became enraged. Then, Jackson interjected with a look of annoyance. Madison, don't react to everything the kid says. It's immature. I'm correcting his rude behavior towards adults. I raised my voice, pouring out my grievances. Hey, why don't you get involved with Benjamin a bit more as a father? I'm providing for the family, isn't that enough? Jackson glared at me, defiant. Who do you think allows you to have such an easy life every day? Since you're useless and can't earn money, the least you could do is devote yourself to my family. He yelled at me loudly. Otherwise, there's no point in keeping you in this house. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce. I'll kick you out right now. And to think you can't even have kids, what a failure. I was close to tears. To think he could say such horrible things so calmly. Behind Jackson, Benjamin and my mother-in-law were looking at me with malicious smiles. Then I'll start working. I can contribute to society too. Working from home would be okay, right? Who would want to hire you? If you slack off on the housework, I'll make you quit immediately. After this exchange, I decided to start working from home. I had experience as a sales admin until a few years ago, so I was good with computer work. I registered with an outsourcing company, and eventually, I started getting constant work requests as I built up my performance. I worked in the bedroom, from late at night until early morning, when the family was asleep. Lately, Jackson has been sleeping in the study, bringing a bed in there, so I can use the computer at night without complaints. I would prefer to work in the sunny living room during the day, but my mother-in-law spends all day glued to the TV, watching talk shows and historical dramas, so that's almost impossible. By the time Benjamin entered high school, my work had stabilized, and I was able to save a fixed amount every month. One morning, as usual, my mother-in-law went to wake up her husband and came down to the kitchen looking pale. While preparing breakfast and Jackson drinking coffee at the dining table, she said in a shaky voice, "Dad is
What? We all rushed to the bedroom, and there was my father-in-law, lying in bed as if he were asleep, having passed away. After that, it was chaos. Jackson took over for the panicked mother-in-law, calling the family doctor to issue a death certificate, arranging the funeral service, and taking care of all the other procedures. Seeing my mother-in-law, usually so strong, now in a daze, I felt somewhat sorry for her. But that feeling quickly vanished. While I was doing the cleaning, laundry, and meal preparation as usual, my mother-in-law said spitefully,
"You sure can keep your cool. After all, you've been taken care of by your father. Don't you have a human heart?"
As I was setting the table, I looked at my mother-in-law with disdain and sighed softly. I can say this for certain. I never once felt taken care of by my father-in-law since getting married. Being with my father-in-law made me feel like I was air. It was unpleasant. So, it feels strange suddenly not having him around, but I don't feel sad in the slightest. Well, I'm still his daughter-in-law, so I'll attend the funeral and fulfill my duties. With that in mind, I took out clothes from the closet on the second floor and prepared a bag. Benjamin and my mother-in-law said they would prepare the funeral home and left the house before me. As I was getting dressed and walking down the stairs, I heard Jackson's voice. He seemed to be talking to someone on his phone.
"Yeah, Dad, just suddenly. So, I'm a bit tied up with everything. I'll be a bit late to meet you tonight. Sorry, especially since it's an important day."
I felt a sense of discomfort. In front of my mother-in-law, he acted sorrowful, but his voice didn't sound like someone whose father had just died.
"Why did I marry such a plain woman?"
Jackson explained with a laugh.
"I felt sorry for her because she can't have kids. Basically, it was for charity."
I gasped.
"And yet, she's so cheeky it's annoying. Acting like she's Benjamin's mother when she's just a maid."
He chuckled then.
"I'll have her cover the funeral cost. With that money, I'll buy a high-brand bag for you. Charlotte wanted one, right?"
He continued talking in a cheery tone, unaware that I was listening in the hallway. When I showed my face after he ended the call, he was startled for a moment but quickly put on a smile.
"Oh, you were here?"
"Yes."
"Aren't you leaving yet?" "I'm heading out now. Want to ride together?" "Maybe I will."
Trying to keep calm, my body trembled with anger. I murmured in my heart, "I'm done with this. Such a person is neither family nor anything to me. I'll vent all the frustration I've been holding back. He's mistaken if he thinks I'll stay quiet forever." The next morning, as I sat leisurely on a sofa drinking coffee, my phone rang. It was Jackson. Early in the morning, calls from Jackson came every few minutes. The barrage of messages was intense. Even though I saw the messages, I didn't respond at all, so he must have switched to calling out of impatience. Sighing, I answered the phone to Jackson, ranting rapidly.
"Hey, what are you doing? The funeral's about to start." "Oh, really? That has nothing to do with me."
Jackson was furious at my casual response.
"What? Stop messing around and get here now. I thought you went home because you disappeared from the wake, but then you just vanished."
I calmly replied to the frantic Jackson.
"That's impossible. There's rush hour traffic, and it's over a 2-hour drive by car."
I sent a photo I took through the window to Jackson's phone, and he yelled,
"Where the hell are you?" "I'm at a hotel in the next city. I've always wanted to try their breakfast buffet. Food made by someone else is the best." "You're skipping a family funeral to stay at a hotel? Are you out of your mind?"
I coldly replied to the barking Jackson.
"Well, I'm not family, am I? Just a maid. I have no obligation to attend the funeral."
Jackson fell silent then. After a short silence, he told my mother-in-law and Benjamin.
"Mom, Benjamin, just wait here for a bit."
Footsteps echoed. It seemed like they were moving down the hallway of the funeral venue. Eventually, the footsteps stopped and Jackson spoke again.
"First off, give me your bank account number."
"What?
"Why? We need to pay for the funeral service, don't we?" So you're saying I should cover it because you misused funds?
After a moment of being speechless, Jackson yelled in desperation.
That's right. I know you've been hoarding it. You can easily spare something like $20,000, can't you? If I give it to you, it'll never come back, right? Deal with it yourself. How dare you speak to me like that?
Over the phone, I could sense Jackson's panic.
A wife should just silently obey her husband. A wife isn't a slave.
I sneered at Jackson.
Anyway, why don't you just be honest with your mom? She's soft on you, so she might just give it to you easily.
My words made Jackson's voice shrink.
That's impossible. If she found out I spent the funeral money on a woman, she'd definitely get mad.
I smirked. Even he's afraid of his mother.
Serves you right. It's your own fault. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now.
Jackson was still shouting something, but I hung up. If he's too embarrassed to say it himself, I'll pass the message along to him. Sharing the info about him spending the donation on a woman in the family's shared social media will surely catch Benjamin and my mother-in-law's eye. After that, Jackson called me incessantly, so in frustration, I dashed to the mobile shop.
How can I help you? I want to cancel my phone plan now.
Sure. Canceling my phone and changing my number filled me with a sense of relief. Returning to the hotel, I wandered the nearby streets with a leisurely feeling. Ever since getting married, I had to report my outing plans and return time to Jackson, and there were even times he'd call come home soon. I never thought much of it before, but looking back, it was a terrible constraint. Jackson must be flustered not being able to contact me by now. Serves him right. I'll ignore him forever. Wrapped in a refreshing sense of freedom, I enjoyed shopping at my leisure. One day, I visited a church. My mother-in-law had mentioned that they were holding the service on the previous Sunday morning. I confirmed Jackson's car was parked in the parking lot. Likely, the other cars parked alongside it belonged to relatives. I opened the gate and stepped on the cobblestone path leading to the main hall. Listening closely, I could hear the murmur of casual conversation. The service had ended, and it seemed everyone was relaxing while having a chat.
Hello everyone, it's been a while.
As I opened the entrance door and greeted them, the room fell silent for a moment before a wave of reproachful voices erupted.
Madison! Skipping both the wake and the funeral, what were you thinking? It was your husband's father's funeral, for heaven's sake. Your own father has already passed, so he was practically your real parent.
I flashed a cold smile.
Well, I've been officially designated as the maid, you see.
While I tossed out this sarcastic remark and glanced at Jackson, he was glaring at me with furious eyes.
I did my best to serve your father and mother. I even tried to fulfill the role of Benjamin's mother to the best of my ability.
I looked over my mother-in-law, Jackson, and Benjamin in turn and shrugged.
But according to Jackson, I'm just a maid. A mere maid shouldn't attend the funeral, right? So, I refrained. I never said such a thing.
Jackson's voice cracked. I exhaled softly and pressed the play button on my phone's recording app. The conversation I had overheard on the stairs filled the quiet lounge with loud volume. As Jackson turned pale, I pressed on.
By the way, now that the funeral's over, did my mother-in-law end up covering the donation? What?
As the relatives looked bewildered, Jackson and my mother-in-law exchanged glances before awkwardly averting their eyes.
No, well, you see, Madison, what are you talking about? It's impossible to spend $20,000 in one night.
Don't talk nonsense. Jackson attempted a forced laugh in front of me as I swiped through my phone.
I found this. Are you familiar with this person? To boldly show their face like this, quite fearless, aren't they?
The image I showed froze Jackson. It was a photo of a woman snuggled up close to a man. Though their eyes were hidden, the man was dressed in a dark suit and black tie. Furthermore, the woman had commented,
"Happy to have my dear Jackson drop by during the wake. Choosing a date with me over saying goodbye to his dad, I'm so happy. He even bought me the $20,000 bag I've been wanting at the brand shop. Isn't it cute?
As Jackson reached out to snatch the phone, I kept it out of his reach, holding it high for the relatives at the back to see.
I searched for this Charlotte person on social media, just going through everything. You can't pretend it's a coincidence with all these details matching up, right?
Realizing excuses were futile, Jackson shut his mouth, a frightened expression on his face. Even Benjamin, usually his father's defender, was at a loss for words. The relatives began to condemn Jackson in unison.
Leaving the wake under the pretext of retrieving something, just to meet your mistress. Shameful.
Previously silent relatives couldn't hold back any longer and erupted in anger.
You bought a brand bag with the donation money. Rushing out before the funeral started must have been to withdraw money from the bank. What a disgrace of a son. Shut up. It was our first date in a month. And since Mom covered the money, it's all good now.
Jackson retorted defensively.
To me, a date is more important than a funeral. If I skipped it and got dumped, it would be a huge problem. Cut me some slack.
Even my mother-in-law was taken aback by this.
Jackson, how could you say such a thing?
Well, it's just an honest opinion, isn't it? Smiling, I spread out Benjamin's bankbook in front of everyone.
Given he shamelessly claims dating is more important than his father, it's no wonder he'd accidentally use his son's savings, right?
Benjamin, peering over, soon looked utterly defeated.
It's empty. This has to be a joke.
He turned to Jackson, accusing him fiercely.
Did you use my savings, Dad? You're the only one who knew the PIN. You knew I've been saving up my money since Mom was around, didn't you?
Jackson, shamelessly smiling, responded.
Well, I tried to use Madison's money, but didn't know the PIN. You had saved quite a bit, huh? That's my boy. Don't mess around. Is that what a father does?
Benjamin screamed, tears in his eyes.
I don't want to call you my father anymore. I'm disowning you right here.
My mother-in-law tried to calm the enraged Benjamin.
Benjamin, forgive him. Thanks to your dad, we get to eat delicious food every day, don't we? Giving your dad your pocket money isn't such a big deal. My money, too, probably went to his mistress, right? It's fine to give gifts, but use your own money. Why are you touching mine?
Benjamin voiced a very valid question.
And the same goes for Granddad's funeral. After all the bad-mouthing, trying to get the money covered by someone else makes no sense. Pay it yourself. What's not there can't be given,
I said, looking at Jackson, and chuckled softly.
Judging by the social media, you've been giving her expensive gifts every time you meet, right? The reason you divorced your previous wife was also because of your infidelity, wasn't it?
Pointing this out, Jackson and my mother-in-law were left speechless with uncomfortable expressions. It seemed Benjamin hadn't been told any of this.
What a nasty woman. Did you even research the cause of our divorce?
I snorted at Jackson's discomfort.
I just thought I'd learn about your past, so I contacted your best friend through an acquaintance. Then, I stumbled upon some interesting stories.
Just then, my phone buzzed with a message, so I stood up.
Excuse me for a moment. I have to welcome a guest.
I left the lounge and headed to the entrance. Returning to the main hall with a couple in tow, Jackson gasped.
Lucas! And Charlotte too!
Sorry, Jackson.
I ended up spilling everything to Lucas.
Charlotte looked downcast, while Lucas was visibly furious.
Lucas, calm down. You're misunderstanding. We weren't having an affair, okay?
It's no use, Jackson. I spoke with a look of disbelief.
Lucas, I found your and Charlotte's text exchanges on the phone. I had a detective agency thoroughly investigate. So, no escaping this one.
Lucas stared straight at Jackson with bloodshot eyes.
Even though you have a bad history with women, I trusted you because you were my best friend. I never imagined you'd secretly meet her at a hotel the day after we went drinking. And then, you kept sneaking into my house while I was away on business trips, didn't you?
With veins bulging at his temples, Lucas yelled resentfully.
I should never have introduced her to you. Come on, my encounter with Charlotte was fate.
Jackson said, grinning smugly.
I'm more suitable for Charlotte than you ever could be. What? Keep your dreams for your sleep. That's ridiculous, right?
Jackson pouted.
I got stuck with a plain, older woman, while you marry a young and cute one. Plus, Charlotte said she fell in love with me at first sight.
Jackson laughed out loud while Lucas clenched his fists.
As you wish, I'll divorce Charlotte. Expect a lawsuit for alimony, and be ready to pay. I don't have that kind of money. I've already spent a lot on Charlotte, and just paying my ex-wife was hard enough.
Jackson said defiantly.
Well, I'll pay with the inheritance from Dad. Right, Mom?
Jackson beamed, but my mother-in-law murmured softly.
There's no such thing. Huh? If we had money, we wouldn't have moved into your place but renovated our old house and lived there.
My mother-in-law spoke with a grim face. I nodded in agreement. My mother-in-law's decision to live together wasn't by choice but due to unavoidable circumstances.
But you had savings for retirement, didn't you?
Jackson showed panic, to which my mother-in-law sadly shook her head.
After retiring, your father spent it all on horse racing. He even gambled away the pension, covering the shortfall with loans. So, there's no inheritance.
Jackson turned pale and shrieked.
No way, give me a break. I moved in with you guys thinking I'd get a hefty inheritance.
My mother-in-law's face darkened with anger.
You were planning this all along? Of course. Otherwise, why would I bother calling you parents over? It's annoying.
Jackson said irritably.
All the living expenses I've covered, just wasted. It's like throwing it down the drain.
Disappointment appeared on my mother-in-law's face.
Is money all you think about? It's my dad's fault, can't help it.
Charlotte smirked, having listened to the whole exchange.
I went out with you because you graduated from a better university and worked for a renowned company than Lucas did.
What a disappointment. Approaching the stiffened Jackson, she declared firmly.
Thanks for all the lavish gifts.
By now.
What? Hey! We're not done talking yet, Charlotte.
Lucas chased after her, heading out the door.
Poor thing, got dumped, huh? No inheritance, and your affair partner turns her back on you. Talk about a double whammy.
I gave Jackson a sympathetic smile.
Paying alimony to both Lucas and me seems like it's going to be tough for you.
Well, good luck with that.
Hey, Madison, wait!
Jackson tried to stop me with a domineering tone as I was about to leave.
How are you going to live if you divorce me with your meager salary? I don't necessarily want a divorce. If you keep doing the housework, I don't mind keeping you around as before.
I exploded in anger at Jackson's arrogance.
Enough already. Who do you think you are?
My outburst surprised Jackson, Benjamin, and my mother-in-law, who all froze in shock.
That house is mine, isn't it? I'm the one who's been letting you three stay there. And let me tell you, it was because of me doing all the housework that the house was running smoothly. Don't you understand that? Madison, calm down. After all the ridicule, you don't even understand that much? Your intelligence is as expected.
My sneering at Jackson caused laughter to break out among the relatives.
I've been offered to return to my previous job as a full-time employee. I can live just fine on my own. Maybe you should worry about your debt-ridden self?
Yeah, Dad.
We're in a worse situation.
Benjamin also tried to stop me in a panic.
Come on, we're family, right? If you become a full-time employee, contribute your salary to the household. We're going bankrupt at this rate.
Benjamin's pathetic plea was echoed by my mother-in-law.
Running away, even though you're just a wife? Help us out for once.
I turned back to the three of them with a cold remark.
Have you forgotten how you've treated me until now? There's no place for a maid in this. Madison! Family of three, please help each other out. And I'll be expecting you to move out of the house promptly.
I left the church. Returning to the hotel, I sent Jackson the signed divorce papers. I plan to live in the hotel until those three move out. Though they left quietly, Jackson kept stalling on the alimony payments. I wanted to reconcile, but she pushed for the divorce, was his excuse. Convinced by the lawyer that a court divorce would cost extra, and is it really worth it, a pale-faced Jackson finally gave in and transferred the alimony to my account. To pay the alimony to me, he had to take on more debt and even started working part-time jobs since his salary wasn't enough. Jackson apparently told his boss and co-workers that the divorce was due to irreconcilable differences. However, since Lucas's friend worked in a different department, the true reason spread throughout the company. Feeling uncomfortable, Jackson quit his job as if fleeing. Naturally, his income plummeted. Now, he's juggling multiple part-time jobs, desperately trying to pay off his debts. Despite once being so close, the family relations have deteriorated. Benjamin has become thoroughly rebellious, skipping school and barely showing up at the shabby apartment the three of them moved into, choosing instead to hang out and waste time. My mother-in-law has not forgiven Jackson for agreeing to live together with inheritance in mind and now refuses to even speak to him. The incident of stealing Lucas's wife spread like wildfire among friends, and Jackson, having lost all his friends, is leading a lonely life. Having returned to my previous job as a full-time employee, I'm working full-time without having to worry about anyone else, enjoying my life alone. Only now do I fully realize how difficult living with those three had been. From now on, I plan to work while taking care of my health and savoring the rest of my life to the fullest.
Get out! You're not my daughter anymore.
The one yelling with so much force that spit flies is my mother. Her face is beet red with anger, and she's holding a knife with both hands, the points directed at me.
I can't support a leech who doesn't even contribute to the living expenses.
Far from not contributing, I am actually putting in more than half of my income, which amounts to $3,000 every month, into our household. She knows this. I've explained it to her countless times, but it seems like nothing gets through to her now. There have been some times she wouldn't listen to anything out of anger, but I never expected she'd even bring a knife. For now, I just try to not provoke her further and quietly create some distance to avoid getting injured. I heard my mother's cold voice.
If I knew you'd turn out to be such a parasite, I would have never had you.
I'm Hannah, 29 years old. Thanks to my hard work, I now work as a software engineer at a well-known corporation. My decision to pursue this career was influenced by my dad. He's always loved tinkering with computers. He was fascinated with machines since he was a kid, and he was thrilled the first time he saw a computer. I was excited back then, but the latest computers are amazing. Look, this one is so thin yet the screen is so clear. He'd say with a smile. And he used to take me to electronics stores. He would show me the latest computer models, pointing out their features. Seeing my dad so happy working with computers sparked my own interest. Although he was usually quiet, he would teach me all about them when it came to computers. Eventually, I realized I was better at using computers than most people my age, and I wanted to learn more deeply, leading me to major in engineering in college. When job hunting, I chose a career related to computers without hesitation. I successfully landed a job as a software engineer at my current company. Most of my work is remote, and I've enjoyed it, managing to achieve a lot compared to my peers. The times I'd go home and talk about work with my dad were some of the best. Then, one day, my dad collapsed. I got a call from Mom and rushed to the hospital.
Is Dad okay? He suddenly fell over, and I called an ambulance right away. They ran tests as soon as we arrived at the hospital and said it's subarachnoid hemorrhage. He needs urgent surgery, and he's in the operating room now. What are we going to do about our life from now on?
Oh, Dad. I waited, praying for his safety. A few hours later, the doctor came to update us on my dad's condition. The surgery was successful, but there might be some lasting effects on his arms and legs. The most important thing was that he was alive. That gave me some peace of mind. My mom said beside me, "What about work? I wonder if he'll be able to work again. I'm worried. If we lose our income source, how am I supposed to live?" My mom was concerned about her own future. She's always been like this. She always thinks of herself first, before the family. Seeing her like this made me sad all over again. I visited a few times while my dad was hospitalized, and just as the doctor said, he seemed to have trouble moving his arms and legs. He's been working hard on his rehabilitation before discharge, but it was clear he would have some disabilities. During his stay, my mom would bring only the bare minimum necessities and leave quickly. Considering the commute to his job would be too much for him in his condition, and realizing he couldn't continue working, my dad had no choice but to resign. Since he would need care and couldn't live alone, I had discussed it with my mom. "It's gonna be hard for Dad to live alone with his condition, so I hope you can help him out." But I wasn't really expecting an answer to begin with. "I've got my hands full too, and I can't be bothered with taking care of him." Mom snapped back instantly. I was disheartened. Mom was never the type to put family first, even when I was little. She always put herself above everyone else. However, I believed she had some love for Dad and thought she'd reach out to help him now that he was in this condition. But she refused my request for care as well. "Yeah, I get it. Then I'll just move back in and take care of Dad myself. That would really help me out. When can you start living here?" Since my job was basically remote, I figured I could balance work and caregiving as long as I had a laptop and could conduct online meetings. I knew it'd be a tough life balancing work and caregiving, but for my beloved father, I decided to move back in with my parents. The day I moved back home, while packing up, Mom said to me, "For breakfast, make sure we can eat by 7 a.m. It'd be good to have eggs and salad, considering health. And keep the trash in small bags to avoid smells. Oh, and burnable trash goes out on Mondays and Thursdays, so make sure to take it out. And remember, cleaning is a daily task." I'm so glad you're back. Mom had said she'd take care of herself when I moved back, but suddenly, she started dumping all the housework on me. Yet, for all her demands, I noticed the house was a mess. It seemed she hadn't been doing much cleaning herself. As expected, I ended up doing all the chores while Mom did nothing. In fact, she was hardly ever home, living her life as she pleased. Now, not only was I working and caring for Dad, but I was also stuck with all the housework, making every day incredibly busy. My dad, who had lost a bit of weight, would apologize, saying, "I'm sorry for the trouble. You have work too," but I just smiled and shook my head. "Don't apologize. It's not your fault. I'm happy I came back home. I enjoy our talks." When I told him that, my dad seemed a bit relieved. Caring for Dad wasn't too hard since he wasn't bedridden or unable to eat by himself. It was more about lending a hand with daily activities, which wasn't as difficult as I feared, and I cherished spending a lot of time with him like when I was a child. Meanwhile, Mom, who did nothing, was always complaining. "Hannah, your cooking is kinda bland and simple. Don't you think Dad isn't getting enough nutrients? You're such an unfilial daughter." It irks me to see my mom quickly eating up my cooking while making comments. However, when Dad was brought into the conversation, even I had to take things seriously. Considering his age, he doesn't eat much, but I thought it might be easier for him to eat if I increased the number of small dishes rather than serving big platters of food, so I added more items, but Mom didn't say anything. Instead, a few days later, she said, "Lately, there's just too much food. Dad and I are old, we can't eat all this. Don't you know how to save money, even though you've been living on your own?" I couldn't help but retort when she said that, all the while finishing off her meal completely. "It was your idea to increase the number of dishes. I did it so Dad would have a variety and not get tired of the food." Then Mom visibly sighed and stood up from the table. "What's with that tone? It's like you're saying you only did it because I complained. How ungrateful."
unbelievable. It's because of your attitude, always taking things the wrong way, that you're still unmarried.
Mom, clearly angry, stomped off towards the couch in front of the TV. She left the dishes on the table. She plopped down on the sofa roughly and just looked at me before shouting, "Coffee." While I was clearing the table, thinking who would even bother preparing it for her, she threw a cushion at me.
Hey, hurry up and make the coffee. You're almost always at home, not even working. You talk about taking care of Dad, but are you just after his pension? And yet you can't even manage the household properly? How ridiculous. We've been over this a million times. I've switched to working from home. When I'm in my room, I'm either in meetings or getting work done.
No matter how I explained, Mom refused to understand the concept of working from home. In her eyes, I returned home under the guise of caregiving, without contributing financially, making me an unfilial child. I'm the one actually caring for Dad, yet she thinks I'm using his pension for myself. In reality, I'm the one taking care of Dad, earning for my parents' living expenses, and managing the household chores, all by myself. I've been put through Mom's whims since I was little, but I've reached my limit. I feel bad for Dad, but I can't live with the three of us under the same roof. A few days after making this decision, I accompanied Dad to his physiotherapy. He's motivated, and while dramatic improvements are unlikely, at least he's preventing any decline. As we returned home, promising to keep up the effort, I saw Mom leaving the house in a hurry with large bags. It's not unusual for her to be out or to come back from the department store with big bags, so I didn't think much of it. However, the next day, when I went to grab something from my closet, I realized all my bags and accessories were gone.
What? Why?
They weren't things I wore daily, nor had I moved them, so they should have been there. Then I remembered Mom's hurried departure the day before and confronted her.
Mom, were you in my room yesterday? What are you talking about all of a sudden? This is my house. I can go into any room I want. Then what's with the bag?
Mom was holding a bag from a high-end brand. It was clearly something she bought that day.
You always tell me not to waste money, and yet you have the money to buy luxury items? Well, you're the one wasting money, so I decided to make sure you'd pay for it.
Confused by her words, I frowned, and she started laughing cheerfully.
You had some pretty nice bags. Just the bags and accessories alone brought in a good amount of money.
Unbelievably, Mom had sold my accessories without my permission to buy things for herself. I was furious and shouted, "What the heck, that's unbelievable. It's worse than theft, selling them without my permission. Pay me back." Then Mom's face twisted in rage. "How dare you talk back to your parents like that? In my time, we absolutely obeyed our parents. I worked and took care of them. I'm taking care of Dad, and you do nothing but complain." She slammed the table with all her might.
Why don't you help with Dad's care then? Do you remember ever helping since I got back? Who prepared his clothes? Who helped him stand up from his chair? You don't do any of that, yet you claim to be taking care of things. The one being taken care of the most in this house is you.
I couldn't stand it and slammed my hand down on the table, staring at her. Mom had a rough relationship with Dad's mom. You could say she was pretty much bullied by her mother-in-law. I didn't have much to say about that, but I couldn't stand her claiming she was taking care of Dad. Dad had given up on receiving any real care from Mom a long time ago. Still, he tried to engage in small talk, bringing up TV shows or stories from friends he heard during physiotherapy. But as soon as Dad started talking, Mom would just disappear from the room. I wondered how she could claim to be taking care of him with such confidence without actually doing anything. While I was lost in thought, Mom kept silent. Then, slowly lifting her hands from the table without saying a word, she turned her back to me and walked into the kitchen. Just as I sighed, thinking she was just going to ignore the conversation, Mom came back way sooner than I expected. She was rushing towards me, holding a knife with both hands.
Mom?
Her face, pointed at me with the knife, was redder than I had ever seen it. Trembling with anger, she shouted louder than I've ever heard before.
Get out of this house. You're just a parasite living here for Dad's pension.
At that moment, I realized none of my words had ever reached her. To Mom, no matter how much I took care of Dad or how much I worked, I was nothing but a pest.
I'll find a new place and move out as soon as I can,
I said as I slowly backed away, putting some distance between us. Then, seeing that Mom didn't move, I ran to my room. I thought I wouldn't feel anything being rejected by Mom given our strained relationship, but tears wouldn't stop flowing from my eyes. It wasn't because I was sad. It was out of sheer anger. I immediately started to take action. From that day, I began preparing to move out. I talked to a colleague at work who knew someone in real estate, and they helped me find a new place. Whenever I had free time, I packed my belongings into boxes. Finding a new place didn't take as long as I thought it would. With the help of my colleague, I got everything ready and then talked to Dad.
Dad, can we talk for a sec? What's up?
I told Dad everything about how Mom had been treating me.
That's awful. I had a feeling about Mom's attitude, but, given my situation, felt it wasn't my place to say anything. I'm sorry. Dad, it's not your fault. Actually, I've been thinking. When I was well, she pretty much dumped all the housework on me, like I was some sort of maid. And she always asked for money. I was struggling, too.
Dad continued.
Even now, when I need care, it's only you who looks after me. She never even tries to help you out. I'm truly disappointed in her attitude. That's why, actually, I'm considering getting a divorce. That's tough, Dad. You've been going through a lot too. Nah, compared to what you've been dealing with, my issues are nothing. Thanks a lot.
I'm grateful to you too. I was really happy to be able to come back home and spend time with you, Dad. It was a feeling from the bottom of my heart. I want to be with Dad. From now on.
Dad, I have something to ask.
Having understood Dad's feelings towards Mom, I had a plan in mind. I shared it with him. A few days later, we decided we'd move out while Mom was away. Every Wednesday, she'd head out in the morning to her yoga class, catch lunch with friends, and wouldn't be back until after 3 p.m. We made sure to schedule the movers for Wednesday morning when we knew for sure Mom wouldn't be around. They loaded up the truck with our stuff. As I sat in the rented car, feeling a bit sad that this was the last of this house. I wasn't alone. Dad was with me. We both wanted to get away from Mom, so we decided to move out and live just the two of us. In the car, Dad said,
Hannah, are you sure this was the right decision? This could have been a good opportunity for you to be freed from taking care of me. Don't say that, Dad. I want to live with you. That's my greatest happiness. Let's keep going, just the two of us. Thank you.
By the afternoon, we had finished moving and were eating sandwiches we bought for lunch in our new place.
Sorry, we didn't have time for anything else today. It's nostalgic. I used to eat these a lot before you came back home. I never had time to cook because of work. Your mom always complained, though.
Dad laughed at that memory. The sandwiches tasted especially good as we chatted about such simple things. While taking a break from unpacking, the phone rang. It was Mom. I answered it and put it on speaker so Dad could hear. Yes?
Why are you both suddenly gone?
You could tell from the phone she was freaking out.
Why are not only yours, but also Dad's things gone? Dad and I decided to move out together, especially since you told me to leave.
Is there a problem? You won't have to worry about caregiving or living expenses anymore.
What about my life? I was relying on Dad's pension and retirement savings. Where are you now?
Why don't you take care of yourself? We're at our new place now.
Won't say where, but we bought a condo in a high-rise.
What?
High-rise condos are for rich people.
Don't joke with me, you can't afford that. Mom clearly didn't believe it, but it was true. We moved to a high-rise condo close to the hospital where Dad goes for his treatments.
I've told you many times, I'm still working. You used to mock it as just pocket money from a side job, but our company is quite big, and I've been there long enough to be trusted with significant responsibilities. You might not remember, but the $6,000 I've been depositing into the account each month since coming back was from me. What? I thought that was Dad's pension. The account balance was from his retirement savings, right? Dad's salary was never that high, right? The retirement savings were gone the month after he received them. I saw the credit card statements. It was all spent on designer bags by you, wasn't it? That's why I've been supporting the household. I didn't know. Nobody told me that.
Realizing further explanation was pointless, I continued.
It's not that you weren't told, you just didn't want to listen. I've told you many times. Also, I heard from Dad. Despite him always being at home during his working years, you'd go out with friends every day. You managed the finances poorly, spending wildly, and then complained everywhere that he was too controlling. And now you're only worried about money? Hannah, knowing this, you deceived me. If you have that much money, come back home right now.
To Mom, family was just a wallet. She didn't care about Dad's health, only about money. Despite all this, her management of the bank account was sloppy, and she thought it was fine to use the credit card however she wanted without any problems. It's baffling how she managed to get through life thinking like that. Dad, tired of the endless conversation, took over.
Even if you won't listen to me, I thought you might listen to Hannah, but I see that's not the case. Thanks for everything so far. I won't interfere with whatever life you choose to lead. Let's get a divorce. Divorce? Wait, what about my life? You'll be free to live as you please without having to care for me. I'll send the divorce papers later, just sign them.
She really couldn't think of anyone but herself. As I was lost in thought, Dad hung up the phone without another word. Sorry for putting you through that. I just replied, thank you, Dad. The next day, we were off to the hospital for Dad's appointment.
I never imagined we could live somewhere so convenient. Thank you, Hannah. I just wanted to make sure it was easy for you to live, Dad. Plus, compared to downtown high-rises, the prices here are a lot more reasonable, so it looks like we can have a more comfortable life.
We left the house with that conversation. It took us about 10 minutes to get to the hospital. As the automatic doors at the hospital's entrance opened, we both gasped. Mom was sitting in a chair near the entrance. It seemed she had been waiting for us since the morning. As soon as she saw us, Mom stood up energetically as if she had been waiting just for this moment and walked towards us.
What was that call yesterday all about? I didn't hear anything about your salary or you and Dad moving out. I won't allow the two of you to live in a nice place without me.
Suddenly, Mom's hand reached out towards me. She grabbed me and said,
I'm going to live in the high-rise too.
Even with her acting like this, I was beyond anger, just remaining calm. Why would she think this approach would get her what she wants? It became clear she hadn't thought about us as a family at all, and I found it pitiful.
This was a decision Dad and I made together. Please give it up. I've decided I no longer consider you my mother. Thank you for everything. But from now on, let me live my life. I won't allow that. I don't need your permission. Now, let go of me. This is a hospital. If you keep this up, I'll call the police.
Finally regaining some composure, Mom looked around for the first time. Other patients were glancing over at us. A hospital staff member, accompanied by a security guard, was walking towards us. In a panic, Mom let go of my hand.
Is everything all right?
Without looking at the person who asked, Mom hurried away.
That was my mother. We had a little dispute.
I said as I watched Mom's back disappearing through the hospital entrance. She seemed weaker than usual. For the next few days, Mom appeared to stake out the hospital and search the surroundings for us. But Mom only acted tough towards those she perceived as weaker than herself. After being escorted out by the security guard and yelled at by other patients calling her a suspicious person, she never showed up again. That day was the last time I saw my mother. Afterward, Dad consulted a lawyer to seriously pursue a divorce from Mom. Mom was reluctant about the divorce until the end, fussing and even saying she would demand alimony. But when the lawyer patiently explained that her position did not entitle her to alimony, she realized she couldn't get any. She tried to appeal to the lawyer's sympathy, claiming she couldn't live on her own, but the lawyer coolly referred her to municipal assistance and support centers and proceeded with the formalities. Eventually, a few months after the incident at the hospital, the divorce was finalized. Dad decided to sell our family home since he wouldn't be using it anymore. Mom was strongly against losing the house at the first time, but at the moment she learned she'd get money from the sale even after the divorce, she changed her attitude quickly. She wholeheartedly agreed, a sight so foreign it was hard to believe she was my mother. Dad and I sighed together, remarking on her greed until the very end. After selling the home, Dad and I have been enjoying a peaceful life. I kept busy with work, household chores, and caregiving, but the care services available in our new area are far more comprehensive than where our old home was, allowing me to hire a daytime helper and go into the office more frequently. Dad's condition has gradually worsened with age. And we've been troubled over the doctor's suggestion that he consider moving into a facility. Just when I was getting used to our new routine, I received a call from an unknown number. Thinking it was work-related, I answered only to hear Mom's voice.
Hannah, I've almost run out of savings.
Just a few months after receiving the money from the house sale, her savings were nearly depleted.
So, give me some money, even a little. Think of it as your last act of filial piety.
I have no money left to give you. Dad and I are living happily together. Please don't disturb us anymore.
How dare you call me a disturber? To your own mother. After everything I've done for you, giving me some money should be nothing for you, Hannah. Why do you think you're working at a good company? Pay back your mother properly.
Don't contact me again. Exhausted from arguing, I hung up. Later, I blocked her number, but she kept changing her number to call back. It seems she hadn't realized at first that I was blocking her, but then learned she could reach me by using different phones. Despite continuously blocking the new numbers, the cycle didn't stop. That continued until I changed my number, finally putting an end to her calls. Later, through a mutual acquaintance, Dad heard about Mom's situation. After her savings ran out, she lived in a rundown apartment on the outskirts and managed to get by with part-time jobs, having never worked before. Without any money for hobbies, she was just barely making ends meet on her own.
Maybe she's finally learning to live like a person, Dad said. Perhaps I spoiled her too much.
I whispered agreement and asked Dad, "Are you happy now?" Smiling at me, he said,
"Of course, I am. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate everything you've done."